when I first decided to make some speakers, and it was clear that Purify to me were going to be producing drivers that solved a lot of the problems which just have been sitting around with drivers for years.
Well, no one could really work out a way, and it did involve to cure one of the issues. It did involve an odd-looking surround. So if people are listening, as they are listening, they're not watching.
I'm bracing myself for the show because we get asked this question about 100 times per day.
Yes.
What's your woofers are broken? Look at the surrounds.
And welcome back to Not an Audiophile, episode 28. Today is part 2 of our Sydney or Australian HiFi show roundup. And the show was held a couple of weeks ago, and we spoke to some very interesting people during the show. And I could list them all and all of their products, but there are so many. This is a long episode. There is chapters. You can skip to the part that you want to listen to now, which is kind of handy. But first up, Alan March. This episode of Not an Audiophile, the podcast, is sponsored by the subwoofer people, Harbottle Audio. If you're serious about subwoofers or just tired of muddy bass and bloated hype, check out Harbottle Audio. With over 800 subwoofer configurations, they solve problems from Trinov waveforming to vintage analog systems needing an actual musical subwoofer and not some hopeless air pump. No gimmicks, just pure, unadulterated bass engineered to a performance standard focused way beyond the mundane THD versus SPL. And yeah, the CEO wrote this ad. That's how inept they are at marketing and how much they care about sound. www.harbottleaudio.com. We're with Alan March from March Audio. I always wonder how you come up with a name, but we haven't spoken to you for a while, Alan, because you've been busy, very busy. New models.
We have been busy. I mean, we've moved house, we've moved office from Albany, right in the bottom of Australia, to just north of Perth.
Yes,
it's about a 5-6 hour drive.
It's a big move.
Yeah, and that's taken up a lot of our time, but we've also been busy trying to get some new products finished.
We haven't been trying, you've achieved that, because they're finished, it seems. You've got You've got a wonderful looking little, it's little compared with your previous floor stander, and I'm not going to pronounce any of the names that you've ascribed.
Shall I explain the names to people?
Well, it's Norwegian or...
It's Finnish.
Finnish. Okay.
So the whole Finnish thing is due to us having 2 very fluffy Finnish Spitz dogs.
Oh, is that the connection? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Orange things that look like Samoyeds, but a bit smaller.
Okay. Orange.
They're orange, yes.
Not bright orange.
Ginger. Well, fairly bright.
Yeah, okay.
Same colour as Ritz.
Okay. Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And they are the national dog of Finland.
Okay, right.
So we've got rather boring names for our power amplifiers and amplifier range.
Simple numbers.
Yes, numbers, engineering numbers. So as there is a penchant for giving speakers crazy names, I thought we'd go with Finnish names.
And indeed you did.
So we have the Sointuva, which no one can pronounce.
Sointuva, which is your first one, your stand mount model?
Stand mount.
Yep.
What does that mean? It means, I've forgotten. I've completely forgotten. We've got the big one, the Kura.
You're not meant to forget.
I know. You're going to have to edit this. This is terrible.
No, it's perfect. It's fantastic. And we do no editing. I should have warned you at the start.
Just to explain to everybody, we've just finished setting up for the show, and it's been a...
And you should explain that, because I'm sitting with you in a very large space at this show. There is kind of 3 different areas, or maybe 4, maybe 5 areas of display. You've got 3 systems set up. Well, 2.5 systems. 2.5. Yes. And it's a big space, and of course we're in Sydney. And for those listening overseas, Sydney is on the other side of the country from where you live, 4,000 kilometres away, and it's a big trek. You packed up multiple pallets of gear and dragged it up. Well, a trucking company did, but unlike last year when you had to drive.
You haul it across the country.
Yes, because of flooding and the freight companies weren't working. So an easier way, to some degree, path to get here this year, but still 24 hours worth of setup.
Yes, and that's frazzled my mind somewhat, but we're all ready to go now. So yeah, we've got our big Wilkins speakers, which is Finnish for thunder.
So that was your first floor stander, and it's a hefty thing.
Yes,
the big waveguide and what looks like about an 8-inch bass unit.
Yep.
Or mid bass unit, I guess. And quite a substantial box means, you know, and it's a bit over a metre high, 1,100 or something.
Yeah, it's about that. Yeah.
Yep. But the new floor stander is a bit cute.
Dinky. Yes. It is a consideration for people. They've got to put these things in their homes. So
and everyone needs a bright red speaker.
So not everybody can fit an Wilkins into their living room. So we do need some smaller speakers as well. So we've got the new Kuro speaker.
Oh yeah, so
Kuro, which is Finnish for choir or harmony.
Okay.
Or chorus.
So not a comment on its scale or cuteness.
So it's a fair bit smaller than the Wilkins, but it's got two 6.5-inch Purify woofers, and the new Purify waveguide tweeter.
Yeah. So that's brand new.
That's brand new. Yes, those are the prototype we've got in front of us right now, and we'll be playing them at the show to see gauge what people's reaction is going to be. Yeah,
well, we will report back on that because, as I mentioned in every one of these segments, in fact, this is being broadcast somewhat later than the show, but only by a few days. It is very much a show report. So, I made the comment about the red, but of course, all of your loudspeakers are really built to order. You can have any colour you want. If you want pink ones with purple spots.
And we've even done a speaker that's in army green and the guy wanted like MASH, you know, the black stenciling.
That kind of stenciling.
Which was interesting.
That's actually kind of cool. All right, because I think the appearance kind of lends itself to that.
We've done taxi cab yellow.
Really? Okay. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, we've done all sorts.
Yeah, all right. And there was a time when you were doing timber well, they're not even veneer.
No, they're solid.
They're solid. Yeah.
We're still doing that. All of the speakers are available in multiple hardwood finishes.
Now, how do you deal with that acoustically?
Lots of people ask this question. It's absolutely true that the different woods, because obviously the painted ones are MDF, like everybody else's speaker is. Yeah. Because MDF's a great material for making speakers. And it is absolutely true that different woods have different densities, different mass, and therefore a panel of wood, say on a speaker side or front baffle or rear baffle, they'll all have different resonant frequencies because of that different density and mass. And we just get around that with again extensive bracing inside, but a lot of damping.
Yeah, okay. So there is some bracing, but you do.
It's a double-edged sword. You can go sort of one of two ways. If you really extensively brace, you'll make the cabinet stiffer. That will raise all the resonant frequencies. But there is an argument to say that you don't want to do that because it may put those resonant frequencies into a more noticeable range.
Indeed.
And that's a sort of behind the sort of BBC
lossy box
where the walls are fairly thin and floppy and damped, so that
kind of makes not sense, but if you think about a piece of fabric that's wet, try to make that ring. You know,
there are different ways around it. So we just have. I wouldn't even say it was actually extensive bracing. It's because part of my professional background is vibration analysis. So it's just about putting enough bracing in to stop it doing the things you don't want it to do, and measuring it to make sure it's moved that resonant frequency away from where you want it to be.
Like everything, I guess, in loudspeaker design, it's a compromise, and it's finding the right set of compromises. Which, judging by now, I've not heard the new smaller one because really no one has, but and it looks as if maybe you're not playing them, or?
Oh, we absolutely are. We'll be
Yeah,
swapping
yeah.
them over.
Yeah, okay.
Notice the tape marks on the floor.
Yeah. I saw. So
yeah.
the bigger ones are, well, and it's frustrating as a kind of a competitor in one way that they're incredibly good, annoyingly so.
Thank you.
They really are. But then they have some very they're premium ingredients, right? So, because that's the beryllium.
So that's an SB Acoustics beryllium tweeter there, top of the range
tweeter. It's a very expensive device.
Yeah, horribly so. Yes.
And those purified drivers, I've no idea how much they cost, but they're not cheap.
They're not cheap. No. But yeah, we looked at lots and lots of drivers on the market when I first decided to make some speakers, and it was clear that Purified to me were going to be producing drivers that solved a lot of the problems which just have been sitting around with drivers for years.
Well, no one could really work out a way, and it did involve to cure one of the issues. It did involve an odd-looking surround. So if people are listening, as they are listening, they're not watching.
I'm bracing myself for the show because we get asked this question about 100 times per day.
Yes.
What's your woofers are broken? Look at the surrounds. So if you ever go on the internet and have a look at the surrounds on a Purified driver, they do look weird. They don't have a typical what they call half-roll surround.
No.
They literally have
a random roll.
Yeah. So literally half of the surround sticks out, and half of it sticks in. And the reason for that is it solves two problems. With a half-roll surround, as the cone moves in and out, the surface area that's radiating the sound changes.
Okay.
And that creates distortion.
Yes.
One of the distortion factors.
Because in fact the diaphragm is changing size as it moves sort of dynamically or what have you is kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, a guitar as it vibrates or a piano's
doesn't change its size.
It doesn't change its size, no.
And the second problem you have is with the half-roll surround is as it moves, the cone moves along its throw in and out, the resistive force of the surround changes, which is creates another distortion factor. So, Purify the most obvious, now that I've seen it, it's the most obvious thing in the world. Half of the surround sticks out and half the surround sticks in. Which means that resistive force, the cone mover, stays relatively constant, or much more constant than a traditional surround.
Yes.
And the surface area remains the same.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It is aesthetically
weird,
challenging for some people.
It is.
I have gotten used to it, and I now have gotten over my initial concerns. It's because they do work exceptionally well. I mean, people have to listen to your loudspeakers. So I guess some people are listening to this podcast going, well, we were at Sydney Show, we heard them and they were astounding, but maybe taking into account the limitations of this odd space. But I've heard them in odd spaces before and they work well, so I think you might be all right. You obviously listen to the system as you've been setting it up. How do you think it's going?
It's always a problem going to a show and trying to tame the room acoustics. You've got a day to set up and to try your best to tame the room acoustics. Now this room is quite large. I think it's 7.5 meters by.
Which is kind 15. Of a good thing, right?
It's a good thing for low frequencies because it takes a lot of the lowest room modes out. But we've measured it, we've still got a room mode floor to ceiling, which has boomed the bass up a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
We've got some acoustic panels in here as well, but you can never do it justice.
I think it gives people a taste, and of course, to some degree, the show is on an even keel.
Everybody's got some kind of acoustic problem.
Yeah. So, but you've got a new amplifier, and the one I want to skip to and ask you about is the preamp, because as I made the smart-ass comment before, it feels like this has been coming for a while.
Oh, it has. This has been put on hold. We've decided to take different tacks on the design. And it's just always seems to be something in the way to stop us from finishing it, but we have pretty much finished it now. So we've got our new preamplifier. Again, another boring name. So, I'm afraid.
I think, so pre-1 or preamp 1?
Pre-1.
Pre-1.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
It's the first.
I think there's probably quite a few of them called pre-1
I
out there.
suspect there is,
Yeah.
yes.
So it's a balanced preamplifier throughout.
So balanced, okay. So
It's balanced.
it's... Now, balanced is an interesting thing. I want to ask you why you felt that was necessary, and maybe fashion is part of that, but I mean, it's twice as much circuitry, effectively, I guess, and probably a hell of a lot more kind of design and development. Is that
Not
right?
really.
Not
No,
really?
No.
Okay.
Balanced circuitry has been around for a very long time.
Yes.
There's nothing new about it, and it solves many, many problems. There's a bit of myth out there that I think you just alluded to one part of it, is that people think it's more complex circuitry, therefore it can't sound as good.
Yeah, that may be one thought. I don't have that thought, but I do. Well, I'm going to come to my
people have
real question, because your amp has a phono stage in it, but let's
Yeah.
wind back to the line part that's clearly
So
balanced.
so there is a fundamental problem with RCA single-ended circuitry.
Indeed. I mean, is there?
There absolutely is.
Yes.
There's a very good reason why any professional application will use balanced circuitry. And if people think that balanced doesn't sound good, they need to consider that every single recording they've got in their collection has been recorded on balanced equipment.
Well, that's true, yes.
There's nothing out there that, and there's no studio.
In the pro world, everything is balanced,
Yeah.
yes.
And there's a very good reason for it. It's because RCA is fundamentally flawed. The problem with it is that
How are you going?
the problem with RCA.
Are we at a hi-fi show?
Yeah, I think so. We haven't started yet, have we? We missed the start. Anyway, the fundamental problem with RCA is this: the 0 volts or negative part of the circuit.
Hold that thought,
Yeah.
Alan. We're back with Alan March, the Alan March Audio Studio at the Sydney Hi-Fi Show 2025. We've now eradicated our distraction. They seem like very nice people.
Yes.
But the show hasn't
We're not
started
open yet.
yet.
We're not open.
yet.
No.
You were explaining the benefits of balanced in relation to the fact that, I mean, really all music is recorded on balanced equipment or systems or studios, and you're...
Yeah, and that's because there's a fundamental problem with RCA circuitry. So the 0 volts in the circuit on a single-ended RCA connection is also used as the shield in interconnecting your components together. What that problem that creates is that it also tends to be connected at some point in your system to mains safety ground. And
Yes.
what happens is that potential differences between different pieces of equipment makes currents flow in the shield wire, in your interconnect,
Yeah.
which is carrying your very delicate
Yeah.
0 volts reference.
Yes. Yeah.
So these noise currents, and it tends to be in Australia it's 50 hertz mains noise.
Yep.
In America it would be 60 hertz.
Yes.
Will sit there modulating your audio signal, which is crazy.
Yeah. It is.
Whilst a lot of the time you get away with it without any overt
Well, if you're
noticeable.
stuck with single-ended, you're going to have to get rid of it. Some way by, I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, there are various methods, but some of them illegal.
Yeah, you can try and break the ground loop. So this creates what they call a ground loop.
Yes.
And in bad cases it will lead to an audible hum. You'll definitely get it with record decks and pickup and stuff like that, less so with line level. But it's also a more recent manifestation of the problem is you will hear things like, if you've got a DAC being driven by a computer, you can literally get mouse, when you move the mouse, you can get sort of computer noises.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because these noise currents are getting into the ground
Yeah.
and carrying through your
So you
system.
made a decision early that your preamp needs to be balanced, or maybe with your original iteration, you maybe it wasn't going to be, but you realised
it was always going to be.
Okay.
All our equipment, and right from the start, all our power amplifiers are balanced.
Yeah. Okay.
It was really RCA. Why it's still being used makes no sense.
It's cheap. It's a standard, but it's not a standard because every bloody connector and socket is very slightly different size.
Yeah.
You've got to find as someone like myself who uses plugs and sockets in my work, you find your favourites that plug together nicely, and you stick with them because they are all over the place.
Yeah.
The phono stage though, which your new preamp has,
it's still differential.
Okay.
Balanced input.
Yeah, rightio. So how does that kind of work, do you think? Well, when I say you think, you clearly know.
A cartridge is fundamentally a differential source.
Well, it kind of is, isn't it?
So my background is instrumentation. So
when I say kind of is, it's completely.
Well, it is.
No, the cartridge. I mean, the cartridge has four connections, and then there's a separate earth. Yeah.
So the fact that turntables still have bloody RCA sockets on the back just drives me nuts. Because one of the other things about balanced circuitry is because the ground wire is completely separate to the two signal wires, you don't get that ground loop. The noise currents flow in the shield; they don't flow in the signal wires.
Yes.
So they're harmless. So that's one way you get rid of hum. But you can also get hum pickup and noise pickup through electromagnetic pickup. But balanced, I prefer to call it, I don't like calling it balanced because it's differential, or the electronics is really differential, has a property called common mode rejection.
Yes.
So if a signal, what differential inputs do is amplify the difference between the two input wires. Any voltage difference between them, it amplifies it. But any voltage that is the same on both wires, i.e. like noise will probably be
equally picked up by each conductor,
it cancels it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you have an inverting and a non-inverting.
Yeah, because
input.
one channel is one is inverted to the other. So when you meld them together, they go away.
Yeah. So for turntables, a differential input is exactly what you want.
Is there some kind of terror attack or something?
Yeah,
the neighbour to Alan's room, we should tell the listener, is a large, furiously large home theatre system. I will have filtered out the low bass in this recording, so you probably can't hear what's just happening next door, but oh my good God. You'll be taking a rest every so often while they power that up.
Yes, I think we will. We will have to shut down because we can't hear anything in here.
Yeah, it's quite distracting.
Yeah, so my background is in instrumentation was always dealing with very small signals that you might have to run hundreds of meters from the source, from the source to the recording equipment.
Yeah, okay.
It might be a strain gauge in a jet engine, for example.
Yes.
So you need that noise rejection. So to me, it's just insane that the turntables still use RCA connectors.
Is it so your phono stage in your new preamp is, you're calling it differential, which I guess the trade term is balanced, but there is a difference which you are concerned about, or want to make clear, but you still must basically take one of those signals to deck because turntables are wired that way off the shelf. But can you modify a turntable and turn it into a balanced system?
You can, but what you'll start doing when you can get problems where when you start taking a shield down to, or one of the legs of the signal down to earth, you're unbalancing the signal. So you're probably injecting noise into one leg, which won't get cancelled out.
Which won't be cancelled out, no.
Yeah.
So, but could you, if you were building a turntable system from scratch, you could make it balanced?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is our intention.
Oh, hang on, newsflash.
Yes.
There's a turntable coming?
Yes, next year.
Fucking hell. Fuck, this is hot. This is next year.
Yeah.
So we can expect it about 28, 29?
Yeah, but maybe I'm probably retired before then.
But so you feel it can be done differently
And better.
and better. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that's
it
exciting
will upset
news.
people because there won't be RCA sockets on the back.
No, a turntable with Canon connectors, XLRs, whatever we're calling them this week. What do you call them?
XLRs.
XLRs.
Yeah, XLRs.
Yeah, no one really calls them Canons anymore. I think that must have been a brand or something of
It was,
connector.
yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. Okay, so that's hot. So you really are becoming with that step to a source component, you will be a system manufacturer.
That's the intention.
Yeah, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
It's all very good just concentrating on an amplifier, but we need to have a full product range.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we want to do.
So there's a big factory in your future.
Actually, I hope not.
Yeah, okay.
We want to stay relatively small.
Okay.
The last thing I want to do is to turn into one of these faceless,
Soulless
large manufacturers.
corporations.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's part of your appeal, is that you can, people I'm sure realise, maybe not, but if you ring up, you can speak to Alan eventually.
When he picks up the phone.
When he eventually picks them up. When someone does
The problem is I've always got my head in something. Maybe a piece of CAD design, the 3D.
Yeah.
Or
You're not
I've
gonna
literally
interrupt
got a
yourself.
soldering iron in my hand, and the phone goes, and it's just a case I'm going to have to do that
But if
later.
the phone is answered, it will be probably yourself.
It will probably be me.
Yes, yeah, which is nice. And
Yeah,
certainly emails.
Emails are always easier for us because I can get to it at any time. Later in the day, I can get to it.
Which is a much more efficient way to communicate. Yeah. Well, hey, have a great show. And of course, historically, that'll be have a great show, I guess, when we put this episode up. But I will probably swing past again and get some live action footage of what you're up to and add it to our video that we're making. That'll be on YouTube. And congratulations on the new models, really. So a new loudspeaker, new preamp, and I believe actually there's new power amps as well.
Yes, all our amp. Apart from the P501, all the rest of the range have actually been upgraded.
Okay.
Because Purify have released an updated power amplifier modules, and they are significantly better in performance, much lower distortion. I didn't even think that was.
I didn't think
possible.
there was any distortion.
Well, lower noise. In fact, it caused us a bit of a headache because we had to redesign all the buffer amplifiers inside our amplifiers
that's kind of
to
annoying.
actually keep up with it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And reduce all the noise and distortion still further.
And on that front, and I'm sorry jumping backwards, and I was saying our goodbyes, but I'm re-interested in something. So the preamp, of course, is all in-house. There's no modules in that, is there?
No.
I mean, because there's no such thing. So that, I guess, is part of the reason why it's taken you a while to hone it, because it is a 100% in-house design. Congratulations on that. All right, we will speak to you again in a new episode, by the way, sooner rather than later. And thanks again for your time, Alan.
Thank you.
No worries at all. See ya. Looking for your tribe? Visit stereonet.com today. Join one of the world's largest online communities for hi-fi, home cinema, headphones, and much more. Read the latest news and product reviews, or check out the classifieds for the largest range of gear on sale. Membership is absolutely free, so visit stereonet.com and join up today. Thanks for listening to the ad. We have many interviews in this episode, but coming up, John Martin from Bowers and Wilkins, followed by Gareth Weller from Focal and Naim, and then Phil Sawyer, McIntosh, Audio Research, Rega, etc. And we're back with another guest on the Sydney 2025 Hi-Fi Show Roundup. This time, John Martin from, I guess, Massimo, but I mean, it has the distribution company, or it's not even a distribution company, it's the company that owns B&W, Bowers and Wilkins, we have to say these days, of course. And what do you refer to it as, John? Where do you work?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Andrew. So, I mean, I really refer to us as Sound United because that's the
because that is the
core,
the audio business.
That's the audio business, and it's no secret that Massimo, the medical company who purchased us a few years ago, have announced that they are in the process of selling the Sound United business. So we won't be Massimo for much longer.
No, so you kind of, I guess we're talking Sound United from
now
now
on. I think that's the catch-all owner, and we comprise the brands, Polk, who are based in Baltimore over on the east coast of the US, and still have a team there. The D&M team in Japan,
which is
Marantz and Denon. And we've got the team on the west coast of the USA, which is where Massimo is and where our head office is. And so that's where the American operations and a lot of the global executives are based. And we've got the UK team, the Bowers and Wilkins team.
Because there's still, the 800 series, which you've got some on display here at the show, sounding magnificent.
Thank you.
By the way.
Thank you.
They still make those products in Worthing.
Well, they make the products in Worthing. There's a workforce of, I think it's about 250 there down in Worthing, where John Bowers originally.
Is there that many?
Yeah.
That's
it's a big operation. Yeah. And just up the road from there in Southwater, we've got another facility called SRE, the Southwater Research Institute, where all the products are designed. So. We do have a few products that we don't actually manufacture, but we have manufacturing partners for in Southeast Asia, but all the products are designed by us, and then we contract some of them out to build them. But we've obviously got our own factory down there in Zhuhai in China, just across from Hong Kong, where we build 600 series, 700 series, Zeppelins and other things. So
that's your own facility?
As much as it can be in China.
I guess there's an ownership issue or something, but
There's, but it's run by former Worthing engineers who've been down there for a long time. But everything still sort of emanates from the mothership in the UK, and then even the things we make down in Zhuhai, a lot of the components that go into them are still made in the UK and shipped down. So those continuum cones, for example, that's only made in England and then transported down there. So there's still kind of a centre for all of the brands, where that's sort of the brains trust, if you like, for each of the brands. And even within Denon and Marantz, there are different teams doing their own thing, and it's simply manufactured on the same production line or the same production facility. So it's just one big, sort of aggregation of brands, and there's only so much. It's not like it's not like finding a Morris Marina door handle on a Jaguar. We're back in the British Leyland days.
Yes, indeed,
there's very distinct technologies and designs for all the brands.
For each level, so to speak, or brand. So. I'm genuinely surprised that there's. I mean, I don't know how many. I suppose I thought there'd be 100 and something at Worthing, but it's a big
decent
area.
Facility.
It's quite a large. Area.
It is.
I don't know. I couldn't even guess 3,000 square metres or something.
I couldn't tell you, but I know they do everything there from the bending the wooden cabinets and gluing them and baking them in the special ovens. And I mean, I've had the pleasure of being there a few times, and it goes through every stage of manufacturing. Now, we don't make every part of an 800 series in the factory. There are a few things like the diamond tweeters come from Germany. The turbine alloy head, that's actually made in a foundry just outside there. So we do buy some things in, but all the finishing is done in-house, and the painting, and we've got a robotic production line. And of course the Nautilus is still there. We've got a separate part of the factory where Nautilus is made. There's all sorts of cool things there. They do accelerated aging tests and finite element analysis. They've got different labs there where they test materials for suitability, because we do everything ourselves. And even when we buy components in, it comes from us, and we say, well, this is exactly what we want for this product, and it has to meet a certain specification.
Are those the bullet, if you like, that the tweeter, not bullet, the torpedo, whatever it is. I mean, what are you calling it?
We call it the turbine. Sorry, that's the tweeter on top. The pod that sits on top.
Call it a pod. And so that's it looks like it's a cast aluminium part.
No, it's actually a billet of aluminium. It's machined from a
billet.
Yeah, and it weighs about 1 kilo.
Yeah, it's quite. I mean, some people sometimes say, 800 series, it's not exactly cheap. I think it's almost a bargain. I mean, that sounds so ridiculous to say in a way, but having heard the 805 signatures that you have on display, it's so beautifully made, and there is no off-the-shelf parts of any kind, is there? And the bending of the birch, I assume birch ply enclosure, clearly a great material to make speaker enclosures from, and the bending of that, which obviously has its advantages as well, but it makes it super stiff, and
That's right.
and it's the drive units, the cross. I mean, I've seen inside the things. The crossover components are extremely high quality. There's absolutely no compromise, really, is there? That's how you get it to deliver that incredible amount of detail and precision that those loudspeakers deliver. I guess that's the trouble you've got to go to.
Yeah, that's right. And I think since John Bowers first founded the company, because he was an engineer, but he was a music lover as well, and he had this fascination with applying engineering solutions to speakers to remove coloration and remove distortion and all those things. And I think that ethos has travelled through the design team over many years, even since his passing. That's been sort of carried on, and we are focused on making the quietest cabinets that we can, making drivers that reflect certain goals, certain performance goals, and we try and measure those things to understand why things are happening. I mean, we started using Kevlar back in the 70s when it was a bulletproof vest material, and that came about because John Bowers and his team started experimenting with cone materials and listening to cones or drivers that they'd made from certain things, and they found that Kevlar worked really well, and they didn't understand quite why, but they started using it.
We'll give it a go.
And as time progressed and their measuring apparatus improved, they discovered why Kevlar was so good. And that's because of the woven mat that works for bulletproof vests. It makes it very strong, but very relatively light. And in audio terms, it self-damps extremely well, so it doesn't resonate at a certain frequency like a lot of other materials do. So we've carried that through into the Continuum cone, which is actually purpose designed as a speaker cone.
It's some kind of hybrid material.
It's still a woven synthetic material that they don't talk about the construction of. And I've seen them making it from the base material through to all the treatments that they do, and that's a proprietary material. And so it does everything that Kevlar, well, we call it aramid fibre these days. We don't call it Kevlar anymore. But
you're not allowed to or something.
No, that's right. Well, we're not paying DuPont a fee to license the technology.
No.
And so we call it aramid fibre, and Continuum does all the things that it did very well, but even better too. It damps and controls resonance that much better than it did.
Yeah, no, it's completely impressive. I think what people don't realise, that people listening to the podcast casually don't realise, is that there's almost no part of any of those loudspeakers that isn't absolutely B&W, one-off, designed specifically for the task. You're not like like some poor little a loudspeaker builder such as myself who has to buy in drive units from very good drive unit makers, but nonetheless you have to kind of work with what is available to you, whereas you can set a bar much higher. Admittedly, it's a more expensive product, but you can do whatever you feel you need to do to make it happen. But the thing that impresses, I was going to say the pants off, but we don't want to do that. It doesn't impress the pants off me, but clearly the amount of specialised tooling, specialised materials, the trouble that has been gone to is, it's substantial. I mean, and yet the price, compared with some the plethora of things that you see wandering around Munich, as an example, it's almost bargain basement compared with some of the stuff at Munich. So genuinely well priced, I feel.
Well, considering, I think it comes down to economies of scale in large part, because you must make a lot of them. We build so many of them that helps amortise the cost. Although I have to say, we have a global pricing parity model where we sell it at pretty much the same price throughout the world, and our margins are actually quite skinny on 800 series because we're selling at the same price as the bigger markets.
You've got to ship them here.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're not selling as many of them.
No, exactly. We're 2% of the world down here, so the volumes.
So we're still 2%?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
I think it would be more.
Yeah, I know. Well, I guess we're growing, but so
it
the rest of the world.
1 to 1.5. People used to say 1 to 2. Now it's a solid 2, is it?
Yeah.
So when you say you've got a fair bit of volume, can you lend a number to that at all? I mean, maybe on one model or an indication, like 805s?
I think 800 series overall, we're building about 15,000 units a year.
That's quite a quantity.
For speakers that start at
15,000 units, 15,000 pairs.
Pieces a year across all the models. So that's in a range of colours, but that's for a speaker lineup that starts here in Australia at about $15,000 a pair. So it's not entry level.
It's not entry
things
level.
that you bulk stack out.
No, you're not stacking them high and selling them low.
No.
I was going to say, what country? Who buys a lot of 800s?
So there's about 80 markets that we operate in globally. The big markets, it's actually interesting when you divide it up. It's roughly a third EU, a third Americas, and a third APAC.
Yeah, okay.
And some of the big markets, Japan is a very big market for us. So they dominate in Japan. But of course, it's always been strong in North America. The Europe and the UK, of course, we've got good coverage in the large markets there, Germany, France, Italy, etc. And and we hold our own down here in Australia as well. We're hovering around, top 10 position in the globe overall.
Not bad for 2%.
Because it's a big portfolio of products, and we actually bring everything that they make.
Is that right?
We've got nearly 200 SKUs in the Bowers lineup when you count all the colour variations.
Which is that's
a lot of products. Headphones, custom installation speakers. We've got about 30 models there, and that makes up nearly 25% of our business. So it's a big part of the turnover. So I think because we've been established here since we were the first outside Europe, I think there was the Netherlands distributor was the first international distributor, but we were amongst the first to come on board.
71,
72.
That early? 71, okay.
So there's been, I think I estimated at one stage there was approaching 500,000 BMW products had been sold in Australia since Convoy took it on back in those days. So there's a lot of people.
And so Convoy was that original importer?
For Australia, there was a distributor in Perth at one stage who was just bringing it in, but then Convoy took it over.
So in fact, there's really only been because somehow, I don't quite remember how Convoy got rolled into Sound United or whatever happened there, but it really has been in very steady hands, hasn't it?
Yeah, well,
and you've been involved with it for.
I first bought a pair of BMWs back in the early 1980s, so I've been involved with the brand for more years than I like to remember. But I have been. Well, I worked for Convoy twice, and I came back to Convoy in the late 90s, and sort of had a continuous, relationship since then. Yeah. But we took it over when we decided to go direct in Australia. That was 2017.
Yes.
And basically, we just came to an agreement with Convoy to part ways. They actually continued to do our distribution, so it was an amicable split, and we just set up our own local sales office. Yeah. And since then, of course, we've been through the acquisitions of Sound United and then Massimo more recently.
Yes, yeah. But in reality, I guess if at some point Massimo sells Sound United, it really won't change anything in a way.
Well, I don't think so. It'll change what the aspirations of the new owners would be, and that that I can't really speculate on who it might be or what they might do with the company. But I think the intrinsic value of the 4 brands, and don't forget we also do Definitive Technology, which is very much in the custom space these days, and we own Boston Acoustics as well, which is more of a licensed audio product these days. We don't see that much here, but I think, there's a lot of brand equity there, and there's also a lot of infrastructure, and because we do a lot of our own manufacturing, all of that is kind of tangible stuff that will continue into the future for whoever becomes the owner, and we'll see where it all lands.
But Sound United, I think my point is more that Sound United, reportedly, everyone I speak to is kind of happy with the kind of job that's being done with the brands. It's not like it's, there's some situations where corporations, accountants get involved with brands, and then things aren't as good.
No.
Whereas there seems to be a lot of reinvestment. There's everyone seems to be happy. Service is great.
Yeah, we take service very seriously, and here in Australia even we keep virtually everything in-house. We still have customer service, we still have finance, with marketing, after-sales service. We've still got a dedicated group in Melbourne who, does all the day-to-day stuff. So we're not farming much out.
No,
we keep it in-house.
And it's a big business.
It's a sizable business. We've got people in every state and good representation. So, we try and be, as I say, a full-service company, and that means supporting end consumers as well as AV specialists and other retailers that we take product to. Look, the market's pretty mature in most categories now, so it's not a market that's growing exponentially anymore.
But I guess it had its little spurt during the COVID era, but that's and maybe it's rolled off a little bit since then. But it still seems like there's an enormous amount of interest in good quality audio equipment. So.
Definitely there is. Definitely there is. And there are areas such as headphones, for example. The headphone business is very competitive, very cutthroat, but it's a big growth market. So we've made a foray into that reasonably successfully, and that continues to develop. It's very different to selling traditional components. Pros and cons there, but look, we're looking for areas where there is growth, and we're continually trying to educate consumers to the benefits of good audio, hence all of the partnerships, and we've just announced one with McLaren, the McLaren Formula One team, because we've had a relationship with the McLaren Automotive and been in their cars for 10 years. That's now extended to the F1 team, which is the most popular Formula One team, and
I guess you're not putting stereos in.
Not yet, no, I don't think the noise cancelling would need to be pretty good there. But that helps us take the brand to new customers, and even people like David Beckham, who we brought on as a band ambassador. Now that's been controversial, but I don't know that that's a bad thing.
No, of course it's not, no.
People have a view about different individuals, but it's introducing us to new customers and taking us to places where we haven't been in the past. So we are constantly trying to take good audio to consumers, and I think that's important. We need to renewal and it would be great if everyone who's interested in music could hear at least once hear their favourite artist or album through a great stereo system, and then realise, because I think the trap is, well, not the trap, but the reality is that not everyone gets a chance. I guess they may hear it on a friend's system or something, or hear it, but the reality is that you've got to make an effort to walk into an audio store, I guess. And how do you know that you need to go to that audio store? And that's the constant challenge. And I guess that's what this show partly is hoping to address. So. I think, and that's why it's important to support it. To grow the community. That see the Sydney Audio Club here, and and those guys are very enthusiastic and about they're very passionate about being interested in this space. So. So that's really important, and today music is, for a lot of people, a commodity. They get a pair of earbuds with their new phone, and that's as far as it goes. But we've got an obligation to try and educate educate people that there is more out there, and that they shouldn't just treat it as something that comes with their
musical noise. It needs to be better than that.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And not everyone's on board with that, and that's fine. But as you say, everyone should have the opportunity to hear music the way it's meant to be heard. Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you for your time and your thoughts and information. I think some are putting some numbers and some scale to even just the 800 series. I mean, B&W's clearly, I've got to say Bowers and Wilkins, I know. I think B&W's banned, isn't it? You're not allowed. I mean, are you allowed to say B&W?
No, we're encouraged to. Look, they're pretty relaxed.
We're encouraged not to.
Yeah, we're encouraged. Bowers and Wilkins is what the company's,
Well, that's what it was always called, but they are the ones who shortened it originally, right?
Yeah, but
although
you know
a long
what?
time ago.
We brought back Bowers and Wilkins in 2002. I remember that happening, and we were B&W Bowers and Wilkins up to a point, and then they dropped the B&W. But everyone who's been in the business a long time knows this is B&W. So
it's a trap. It's a bit of muscle memory or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that's exactly right.
Okay, well,
thanks for your interest,
absolutely,
Andrew.
a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sometime. Thank
Cheers.
you. Bye. Hey, Not an Audiophile will be reporting from the Munich High End Show, which is on very shortly, of course. Putting videos up almost immediately, recording interviews, etc. And the videos will be available at Not an Audiophile Podcast, the YouTube channel. And we're sort of, I guess, as we try to cover some of the other things that some of the mainstream media that are attending don't necessarily cover. We're looking for, with our educated eye, some interesting products that other people may miss. So please check in during the show. Here with Gareth Weller, a legend in the Australian audio industry, he tells me.
Allegedly.
These days, having been seemingly in the business of importing, selling, distributing hi-fi for quite a while, you are now working with Focal and Naim.
Again.
Oh, yes, so it is
again.
Again.
Yeah. So this is my second stint. So
yes.
Previously with Chris Murphy, one of the builders of the brands in this market, one of the key elements to the success of the brands, along with many others. But a couple of years with him in I think 2017, 2018, before it went to the dark side, if we can say that.
Well, no one listens to this podcast. So
perfect.
So you can actually say whatever you want. I mean, and that's. I mean, I'm not really here today to talk about what happened with the brand, although we want to touch on that because obviously you're responsible for rebuilding it, if that's the right word. But I mean, you've got an interesting new product which is sitting beside us, which we'll have photos of on the website, and you can tell us about that because I think that's interesting because it's actually making best use of the two brands working together in some ways.
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, as a long-time fan of Naim and the way they do things, I never had really that much to do with Focal, but it's a great product. Beautifully made, and they've built quite a reputation quite quickly, really. Although on the bones of JM Lab, as it was back in the day, I think you might know a lot more about that than me. But from sort of a drive unit maker and boxes, and now they're a far more serious, finished loudspeaker system maker. But there was, and at some point they took over Naim, which was feel like it was 2013 or something.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, roughly around that time. Yeah.
So that's kind of okay, but things started changing at Naim at that point. Not necessarily always in a positive way, it seemed. I mean, there's certainly people that left that I spoke to who were quite grumpy. I mean, a change, no one likes it, right?
Correct. Yeah.
But there was obviously some positives to come out of that. There must have been.
Well, I think so. Back in those days, there's there was the way things were done. And then there's new people came in and with vision and with ways that they wanted to see the company go. And when you get two different ideals, you tend to get friction. I can't speak for anybody necessarily at those times, but just the stories that I've heard, and again through experience in going through those similar sort of those similar moments, that it is difficult for people. People do get cast aside, and business must go on, right? And I think genuinely that the
the influence of the parent company and where they're taking the brands is in a much more of it's less audiophile and very much more a consumer-based brand. So they're building a broader base, headphones, integrating the two brands together in the product we have nearby here, and really sort of focusing on a brighter future. Luxury.
Which I mean, what I was always amazed with Naim is they did these amazingly high-tech, big investment type things, like really doing streaming properly and things like that, and a broad range of products. Really, they did it on a shoestring. I mean, it was, as much as the factory, it was the most impressive factory tour I've probably ever had in my life. It just for the care and the detail, the hospital-like atmosphere of just white coats and incredible, enthusiasm for doing things brilliantly, which, I mean, guess built the reputation of that brand and giving excellent backup service, etc., and great sound, right?
Yeah.
But that can't last forever. It's you need a new audience, I guess, of customers, and I guess Focal saw an incredible opportunity and grabbed it. But at some point, it kind of went off the rails, in this country at least, in Australia.
Yeah, so obviously there's a number of distribution changes. Whenever that happens, it does unsettle the market. Sometimes it's for the good, and sometimes it's not so. It's not so positive. So again, not being a part of the brand necessarily through a lot of that. I mean, I was responsible for parts of it, but yeah, I mean, it's very disruptive. It's very disruptive for end users. It's very disruptive for the retailers in particular, because the retailers are thrust into new relationships with people for the brands that they have huge affection for, that they've spent enormous amounts of their hard-earned money investing in the brands for their stores, as well as marketing it and supporting their customers. So thrusting them into relationships with new people, it can be quite jarring. And that's what we've really seen in the market. So we've seen a reduction in availability of the product in the market in terms of restriction of distribution. And now as West Hand, we're looking to rebuild that back out again. So bring the brand back to the levels where we saw it before, and again, touching back on Chris Murphy and the guys, even Len Wallace and Harry, the guys that have been, I guess, the custodians of these brands in the past, where they've done tremendous work, where they've really built a really strong base for the brands, and they've, through all their hard work and investment, have brought it to the country and the enjoyment of people's living rooms over the years. And we want to build back onto that and make sure that we recognise what they've done and get that brand back into the place that it deserves.
That's great to hear, because I mean, it was there was a time for many years where there was the dealers and the customers were extremely loyal, loved the brand, loved the way they did business, loved the sound that you could produce, and the reliability. I mean, incredibly reliable, sturdy product, very thorough engineering, and all about quality, and all made in Salisbury, etc. In the UK, and it's quite a special brand, and it's. It hasn't actually changed that much at HQ, I feel, because they still make a lot of product there. I know they have got some other manufacturing elsewhere, but that's the modern world. It's kind of unavoidable, I guess. But and obviously the Muso speakers, can't the level of fit and finish and complexity in a very affordable, relatively affordable product can't be done in the UK, I guess, easily, not at that price. There was a great deal of very supportive dealers that then, under the previous distributor to yourself, dissolved into the diehards only.
Correct.
Although the two dealers you mentioned, I think, were still supporting it.
Still holding on.
But they may have only been the only two, other than the previous distributor's own retail stores.
Correct.
Which were not really proper hi-fi shops in a way. So it was a strange thing. I never went in as a client, but I guess the service standard was at a lower level than previous, as far as
based on market feedback. I mean, look, again, like you, I hadn't been into the store, so I can't really judge. And I think this industry, it's you can consistently say that there is inconsistency in the people you deal with, right? So if you go into a store on any given day, and depending on who you actually, as a customer, approach as a salesperson in those stores, you're going to get a vastly different experience.
I guess so. Yeah.
And I think therein lies some of the challenges and potentially some of the consumer's perspective on dealing with those stores. But to be fair to them, obviously they've got a job to do and they've got a tremendous responsibility for the brands that they have. But yeah, look, the difference between the long-running name retailers with all of their history and all their understanding of the brand, which is tremendous and also incredibly necessary to do the product justice.
Yeah, very valuable, I think.
Very difficult to transfer that. When you do a distribution change, the knowledge doesn't go with it.
No, that's I think the listeners, many of the listeners of the podcast who are HiFi enthusiasts and customers, and maybe customers of Naim, probably don't realise in the background just the breadth of knowledge and support and love that is helping their experience be as good as it is, and that is dissolved when distribution changes, and it does create, I think, an enormous amount of disruption. It's certainly a complete lack of continuity of the qualities that brand probably had at a local level. Yeah. So you're bringing that back.
Well, trying
piece
to,
by
right?
Piece.
Piece by piece. Look, it's the one thing we don't value in our industry as well is knowledge necessarily. Like it doesn't have a value in regards to, doesn't have there's no loyalty to knowledge, right? Unfortunately, and that's the thing that does get dropped on the wayside. So the people that I've worked with in the past, again, touch on Chris Murphy and Harry from Audiogenesis and Len and his team. There's nowhere near the level of knowledge that those guys have that doesn't exist outside of those stores.
No. Well, certainly Harry is. When it comes to Naim, he is the guy in Australia.
He is,
other than Chris, who was obviously in New Zealand, and no longer a distributor either, which is in New Zealand. I mean, he was Australia and New Zealand, as people listening who are Australians will realise, and gave impeccable service. The guy has encyclopedic knowledge of everything Naim in his head. None, I don't think anything's written down.
None better than him, absolutely.
No. So if you had a problem, you ring Chris. Probably you still do, but he might tell you to nick off. They sort of, after 30-odd years he did Naim in New Zealand.
Correct.
He was unceremoniously, let's not talk about it.
That's true. Moving forward,
to the positives. Now you've got a few new stores, obviously, which is great. So more and more as new products. Both Focal and Naim
new products,
they will be in stores.
Yeah, so fresh products coming through, which provides, I guess, a level of let's say a level of enthusiasm from the market to embrace those new products because they're fresh, they're exciting. New stores coming on board, which is great. So they're having faith in West Hand and again the brands Focal and Naim in moving forward, investing in these brands and creating spaces. For consumers to come and really see and hear and sample the products in tremendous environments. So it is
great
exciting.
Spaces, which is important. Hey, onto the juicy stuff. The reason why people listen to this podcast is not to perhaps hear so much about politics in the audio industry, but this amazing new loudspeaker that sits before us, and I don't know what it's called, so you better tell me.
It's the Focal Diva Utopia. Diva Utopia.
So Utopia immediately implies it's kind of, well, it's not grand Utopia, but it's obviously a high-end, high-range model.
It sits in that family, so grand obviously is the top of the range. This is quite a unique product because it's active, and as you said very early on for the listeners, it's a marriage between both Focal and Naim in terms of the design of the speaker, the implementation of the electronics, the streaming platform. The two brands really have married very, very well into this product.
It sounds, when you briefly described it to me the other day, I got a little bit excited, to be honest, because the reason why is because two things. One, it has Naim amplification built into the loudspeaker. It's an active loudspeaker, obviously, therefore it has the amplifiers built in, but it takes it a step further, and it's got Naim engineered streaming built into it. The same as you would get in like a Unity product or a Naim
or even higher. It's the same module that they implement right the way through to the ND555.
Okay. So this is one-stop product. This is a hi-fi system.
Correct.
It's almost a radiogram. If you put a turntable in the top of it.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, in the sense that it does everything, right?
It does, yes. And it does have provision for a turntable if you'd like. Yeah, it does have legacy inputs.
It just doesn't fit into the top, though.
It does not fit into the top. No, you could possibly get a bespoke shelf mounted to the side of it, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, they are. It is. You effectively just need power for both speakers, and you need a network connection. So whether it be wireless or Ethernet, that's all you need.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm a little bit of a fan of all-in-one solutions. This takes it to the next level. They also look like nothing else.
Correct.
We'll come to that in a second. I just want to talk a little bit more about, because the other thing I think I forgot to say just then that I liked about the name is that you could assume, the name Electronics is, you could assume incorrectly in this case that Naim would use their newfound Class D interest in the as amplification, but no, you're telling me it's Class AB.
Yeah, it's Class AB. Yeah, 400 watts a speaker.
Yep.
Three-way.
Yep.
So they've got the Beryllium M profile tweeter system, which is, I guess, again, synonymous with the Utopia series, right from their car audio, headphones, right through to home audio, running the W sandwich mid-range, and then 4 6.5-inch woofers.
4 6.5. So the grill cloth area on the side, there's a couple of
There's
woofers.
two woofers on either side.
On either side, sort of like doing this, to balance out sort of natural forces, so to speak, of a driver vibrating around. That's very clever. Okay, that's all great. Now, what the hell is going on with the
look?
Veneer or the
veneer?
lack thereof?
Yeah.
It does look a little bit. Oh no, I was going to say something that I won't.
So like a pair of
it's got carpet tiles on it,
like slippers. Yeah. So
but it's way better than that. It looks amazing.
Look, the speakers. So the idea is that they'll be a bit like a chameleon. You'll be able to change them with the environment to suit. So. Initially, they've come out with a grey felt finish, which is very unusual, as you pointed out.
Well, I think it's very French or European, at least. I mean, why wouldn't it be?
It's high fashion.
Yeah.
So they've been, I guess, encouraged and they've and motivated to try and bring in materials that have a nice sort of, I guess, texture, so they feel warm. They have a familiarity to them. Like a nice flowing jacket type thing, like a grey jacket, something that's got warmth and it's great. But not only does it look good, but it also has acoustic properties because it's a very dense felt.
It makes complete sense. It's such an obvious thing to do in a way, is that you'd rather than worry about whether a piece of timber on the side of the box is vibrating and doing something negative with the sound, which it almost certainly is. This kills that problem.
It does,
You've basically got an absorbent material, a dense acoustically absorbent material on the side of the enclosure, but done in a very artful, typically focal, stylish kind of way. There's a lot to like with the look of them, and I would imagine that you could put different clothes on it, a different jacket.
True, yeah. So the grey felt is a standard, and it will remain the standard. There will be, coming in the next, say, 3 months or so, there'll be painted finishes. So again, they will be able to be clipped off and clipped on. So there'll be, I believe there'll be a black, an off-white, and a June finish, which is kind of like a champagne without calling it champagne.
Yes. Yep.
And then moving forward into 2026, there'll be timber finishes as well. So there'll be like really beautiful like ebony woods and dark walnuts and things like that. So some really, really rich colours. We don't know, but we're coming up with the assumption that there'll also be some collaborations with potentially some of the big fashion houses in the world, and potentially have leather finishes and various other things like that to really sort of tie in the real luxury of this product. But
well, it's great I think always to see a fresh take. Avoiding, I mean, it's got beautiful radiuses and it's got the typical sort of slanted top, but it's actually not got the Utopia style different sort of angled baffles, but it kind of looks like it does because of the way they've done the side design. But look, it's stunning. I love it. And I'm going to have a listen to it shortly, but I did hear it playing yesterday, and what I heard was very impressive. But I was passing by rather than sitting down having a listen. But it's, I believe, quite well priced.
Correct. Well, we think so.
You know,
Yeah.
Well, it's not an entry-level product for a beginner, but
it's not. But when you think about what you don't have to buy with it, so
that's right. It's exactly what you need to.
Yeah. So if you're comparing it, say, it's $60,000 Australian. So there is a focus from Focal and Naim to have pricing parity around the world for key models like this.
Yes.
So in Australia at 60,000, it's exactly parity with the US and with Europe.
Okay.
Obviously with the currency conversion taken into consideration.
Yes.
So there's no funny business going on there.
No. Which is refreshing.
Which is, yeah, and like that's part of the values of Westhand as well. Like we don't want to be some of those historic distributors that do. I don't know if I can say take the piss on a podcast, but they take the piss with pricing. So
you can say whatever you
say
want.
whatever I want. So yeah, so we really embrace that concept of parity pricing, fairness,
yes,
and doing the right thing in the market.
Yep.
So these speakers, they're truly good value. When you consider, as I said before, you don't have to worry about furniture, you don't have to worry about source equipment, you don't have to worry about amplifiers, preamplifiers, cabling, remote controls, confusion, barriers for the family to be able to use these. It literally, they'll operate off Bluetooth, off AirPlay, Cast, their own application. It comes with a remote control, which is not IR. It's a
it's like a Naim, which is
Zigbee.
Yeah.
So you don't have to
pair it like a Bluetooth, but it's not Bluetooth.
Correct. Yeah, you don't have to point it directly at it, but
Yes.
again, you can control the basic stuff like input selection, volume
And
control.
those remotes work extremely well.
They really do. Yeah.
I mean,
And
it's not laggy or any weirdness
No.
like that. They don't lose connection.
But the beauty of it is you get feedback on the remote, so you get to see the volume setting on the remote control as well. So
you do.
It recognises
Okay. All right.
what's going on. So again, the speakers themselves, because they don't have a display so much, when you are adjusting things like that,
you
then
kind of want to know where it is.
Yeah.
If you can't hear any sound, of course.
Yeah,
You're
correct.
turning the volume up and nothing's happening. You've got some feedback.
Correct,
That you've got it on the wrong input. Or
Yeah,
something.
and also through the Focal Naim app, you then sort of dig layers into the adjustments you can make for these speakers. So there is
right? Okay.
room EQ and by setting up that, there's auto and manual settings. It's all about measurements and it's bespoke for this brand. So they've done it themselves. And when you're listening to it, with the room correction engaged, well, you can switch it on and off immediately, and it does. It just switches in moments. But you've also got a scale of 1 to 100% of how you want to actually engage.
Oh, is that right?
The room, the EQing that you've done. So
that's very cool.
You can really adjust it to fit the room.
So it comes with a measurement mic. Is that the thing?
Not a measurement mic. It uses your phone.
Uses your phone. Okay,
Yeah.
rightio. All right. Well, that's also kind of smart, right?
Yeah.
So so you basically do run a sort of the test program or however it does it just with your phone.
So you effectively
set your phone where you're going to listen.
Well, you effectively set measurements. So you effectively will pinpoint aspects of the speaker. So you'll locate the tweeter. So you put a dot on the tweeter through the app.
Yes.
You'll then put a dot on the rear wall. You put a dot on the side wall.
Is that right? Okay.
For both speakers. So it measures. So it knows how far it is away from those surfaces.
Okay.
Then you go back to your seating position and then you measure it from there. So it'll know how that triangle will work.
Yeah.
And then it will go through a series of audio tests where it will play one speaker then the other speaker, again pretty quickly.
Yes.
And you're listening for a balance.
Okay.
Not only a balance of the image, but also a balance of the actual volume of each of the speakers based on that. So you can adjust that while you're listening to it on your phone.
Wow.
And then it goes through, I think there's about 16 steps, different frequencies, and then once it's done, it's done. And then you can adjust while you're actually listening.
And then you literally adjust the mix between the revised settings or EQ settings that it's measured and flat, I guess.
Correct. How much intervention you want based on that. So a scale of 0 to 100%. It's pretty cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I mean, so this is an amazing product, really.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, I feel like it's been out for a few months, but I can't quite remember where I saw it. Or is it brand spanking
No,
new?
it rolled into the country in October last year.
Yeah. Okay.
Literally the day that the StereoNet show started.
Yes.
And we had a bit of a panicked trip to the airport to grab them off the cargo ship and then straight into the premium sound shop around the corner from the show.
Yeah.
Had a bit of a launch there and they've been housed at the Focal Power by Naim store in St Kilda since then. And this is our incursion into the Sydney market, the Sydney show.
Incursion.
To show to
Invasion or incursion?
Well, I don't know, either, right? But
right.
you know, the thing about it is that we don't have a focal power by name store in Sydney, so there's no one here authorised to sell them. So the team at Premium Sound decided to come up with us and show the Sydney audio folk these speakers.
Yep.
A real treat as far as I'm concerned. You know, these things don't happen very often, so
no.
So they're here and we're here and we're excited to show everybody and you know and it's a great product and a great experience, I think.
Yeah, no, I think people should look it up. So website-wise, for further information, I guess Focal Name website has...
Yeah, focal.com,
So focal.com.
.com, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Gareth. That's been incredibly informative. I've found out more than I expected to. It's you know, it's a stunningly complex product and obviously performs. It looks amazing. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights on the politics. You know, just a bit of a wrap up of how things were, but how they are now and how it's improving. So thanks again. Have a great show.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, listeners.
A pleasure. I was just talking to Jeff at Hey Now HiFi about his latest installation, another Denon turntable, this time one with a SuperTrack Blackbird arm and a Mutec Hayabusa cartridge. Motorcyclists everywhere are wondering how that could be. Blackbird arm, Hayabusa cartridge. Yeah. Anyhow, then he said he was going back to the store to listen to some records on the Helix 2 in-store unit. I thought, do you ever get sick of listening to records? But then maybe not, playing them back through the Fisher & Fisher speakers that are crafted from slate. Anyhow, enough discussion of Jeff's antics. Back to the show. Today, this segment of the show roundup, we're talking to Phil Sawyer from Synergy Audiovisual. Is that the correct title, Phil? Is that what you call your company?
That is correct, yeah.
And I found out yesterday, while speaking to you briefly, that I feel like I've known you for a long time, but maybe not 30 years.
It's got to be at least 20.
Well, maybe it's 20, and probably is 20, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, but I mean only from the point of view that we're both 20 years older. You've been running the business, or founded the business 30 years ago.
That is correct.
Which is amazing.
In our 30th anniversary, I feel like we're out of L plates now.
Yeah, well, you're definitely out of L plates. For those that are listening who have, the brands that you import, they will know. Rega.
Sure.
And let's cover off straight away on that. Now, you must have spoken to Roy Gandy at some point.
Yes, we're one of the older distributors now in the Rega network. We've been doing the brand for over 27 years. 27 years, wow. Yeah, so it was actually one of our, right now it's our oldest brand that we've been representing in Australia. And I first met Roy back in the late 90s when they were looking for a new distributor in the Australian market. And we were very, very fortunate to be able to meet him in Malaysia, of all places.
Okay, yeah.
He wanted me to come to United Kingdom. I said I wanted him to come to Australia. So we met in the middle.
Met in the middle. And he pronounces it Rega.
Yes, I believe so, yes.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's what I've been told.
Yep.
I've not spoken to him. I think maybe you told me that. I don't know, but it's there's a lot of people who say Rega, which is fine.
Oh, whatever takes your fancy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're displaying at the 2025 Sydney HiFi show. You've got a hell of a room. It's full of equipment.
We're enjoying it.
There's some Rega in there, but you also represent and have done for a long time, on and off, Sonus Faber.
Yes.
McIntosh.
Yes.
Rel.
Yep.
And a ton of other great brands.
Yeah.
But they're probably, is that your core range, or you do have audio research as well?
Yeah. Well, I think we're probably fortunate these days to be a little bit more high end than we were when we started.
Yeah, okay.
When the first brands that we actually imported into the country back in the 90s are now defunct, which is a company called Alchemist.
Okay. So is that where you started?
That was the first brand actually,
okay.
And I saw these beautiful products, the Nemesis and the Kraken and the Forsetti.
I remember those.
Yeah, they were beautiful pieces, and they were set up by three young English guys, and they were exhibiting in the New York show. And I thought, wow, these things are great, and the prices were magnificent.
Yeah.
So that's actually how we started. Very, very sadly, that company was closed probably about 3 or 4 years later, just for financial reasons. and by that stage we'd taken on Rega and a number of other products.
Yep.
And so it's been an interesting journey. So I suppose in some respects the start of the company was at a more humble price points. By the 2010s, we were very fortunate to come into contact with.
We were just receiving drinks. That's
yes, we've got some beautiful coffees here, thanks to Pelagi. We were very fortunate to have the opportunity to represent Sonus Faber, which had been handled up until that point by International Dynamics, and which is Ensel Stereo.
Yes.
And we were able to represent their full range at that point, which topped out at the Amadi homage level. But very soon after that went quite into the stratosphere, so to speak.
Yeah, in fact, I kind of remember that now because you've been doing high-end products for long enough that I kind of forgotten that at some point I actually was somewhat surprised that you were suddenly selling very expensive equipment. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I mean it's and I guess there's a commentary there that that maybe even the high end, which people kind of say, oh, it's the high end is sinking, you know, and we need new customers, all that. But actually, high end, it's a terrible word in a way, but good quality. Is that your eggs ready or? But it's well, I mean, everyone's saying really high end sales are pretty good.
I actually think they're pretty strong as well, and I think people's desire to have something of great performance, great beauty, great value, dare I say it, is pretty strong these days. People want products that they can cherish, that they can love.
Well, you can certainly do that with Sonus Faber. I mean, some of the models are just exquisitely made, aren't they?
Yeah, the designs from Livio Cucuzza and his team in Vicenza are just magnificent. I've just been incredibly impressed by their ability to be able to.
I don't know how they make it. I have no idea. I mean, it's.
Andrew, you have to come
it's such fine.
You have to come for a media tour of Italy.
Well, I will be there soon, but I will be holidaying and doing absolutely nothing.
Enjoy, yeah.
But I actually haven't done any factory tours in Europe at all, so it'd be interesting to see that. So.
Well, shortly after we started with Sonus Faber, that begat audio research, because at the time that was part of the Fine Sounds Group, as it then was.
Yes.
And we were able to do that for a period of time, and then by 2014 to 2015 the group purchased McIntosh.
Yeah.
And so it was a natural progression in some respects that we moved into the high end. Of course, so much has happened since.
So it sort of came to you in a sense because of some changes of ownership in the world.
Yeah.
You sort of seem to get comfortable with it pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think it was at a time when the prosperity for Australia and the world was certainly on the rise. Interesting times that we're in now, Andrew, with the last 48 hours in world geopolitics.
You'd have to tell me about that, because I've been at a HiFi show and I haven't been watching TV. Is there something bad happened?
Well, I think we just had another raft of reciprocal tariffs put in by China on America last night.
God, is that right?
Which affects the American suppliers that we do who sell into China.
Oh, this is a mess.
It's a bit of a.
We don't actually do politics on this show, but I think at some point you have to mention it. It is a weird time. Well, I mean, we've had a weird time with the whole COVID scenario.
Yeah, but I think it sounds trite to say that a $60,000 amplifier is good value. Of course, it's very.
It does sometimes sound a bit silly, but I mean, sometimes $60,000 amplifiers do appear to be great value.
This is the whole thing. If you think about how important music is in people's lives, and the relative investment that we make to have beautiful music versus, say, for example, a home or a luxury car. We still got connection there?
Yeah, just checking the battery level. That's good. You're coming in loud and clear.
Wonderful. It's a beautiful piece of pro kit here that Andrew is
affordable pro kit. But we do things properly at Not an Audiophile. So,
So you
Yeah, but they do. They want. I mean, people.
relative value. Because people drop millions on homes.
Absolutely. Well, now they're forced to, aren't they?
Yeah. Particularly in this town, in Sydney.
Yeah.
But I think that makes, in some respects, investments in audio certainly more justifiable in one sense. Because it's a wonderful way to have a piece of luxury in your life that you might not otherwise have if you're not in the property market, for example. And I think that these products also stand the test of time. They last decades upon decades.
Oh, they do.
Compared to, say, something like an automobile, which might be transitioned every 4 to 5 years, or certainly every decade or so.
I would imagine with McIntosh as an example that you could literally keep it for a lifetime. I mean, I suppose there's some. From a technical perspective, there's probably some pieces that would need servicing. But at the same time, there may be that, but there might also be the streaming stuff or what have you. But because it'll change. But I tell you what, the amplifiers, they're literally going to go on forever.
We always take a little bit of interest in what comes through the service department. We run a fully equipped service
you're
department.
actually different in that regard, to skip sideways away from the excitement and the gloss of the high-end product to the nuts and bolts and reality. You have your own service department in-house.
We do, fully supported by 3 technicians.
Which is super unusual.
A little bit different perhaps from some other contract-based outfits, but
gives you some control.
The benefit is that we get to see what comes through, and it personally, it's of interest to me when you see something that's particularly old come through the doors, and I'm reminded of some 1960s McIntosh pieces that have come through.
Is that right?
One was from Canberra University, of all places. They were actually still using it in a pro capacity.
Is that right?
Yeah, so we were able to service those products.
Yeah,
and some of these brands obviously a little bit younger than that. Rega was started in the early 70s. And of course, Audio Research was late 60s as well, but McIntosh was 49, so
is that when it started? Wow, okay.
Yeah, so it's been quite extraordinary. But we just had the 75th anniversary of Frank McIntosh's founding of the company.
Yeah, okay.
So they had a few mementos for that, a few special editions for that. It's an absolute joy. And but to be completely fair, I get as much interest as from an affordable piece of hi-fi.
Where Rega fits in.
Yeah, which is like a good example. This is the new Brio 7 that's just been released. It's just a glorious.
I don't know why I get so excited about such simple amplifiers, but I think maybe that's the thing, is it?
Well, in one sense, we've got this beautiful new piece from Audio Research, the Ref 330M monoblocks, which as a pair are about $165,000.
Okay.
For a set.
Well, you get 2 for that, right?
2.
Not each.
2 for your price.
A pair.
But absolutely glorious pieces of engineering and moving the industry forward. But at the other end of the spectrum, you've got products like the Brio 7, which are a technical triumph. And I think it's one of the things I wanted to mention today was just the commonality between some of our brands are all driven by engineering prowess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you take a company like Rega, which is started by an engineer, is very much driven from an engineering perspective. In fact, the company's full name is Rega Research.
Indeed.
So the whole DNA of the company is around innovation.
I mean, Rega is something. The things that I admire about Rega, other than the value for money and the great sound quality of the product and the simplicity and durability, is that they do so many things in-house. I mean, I've not been to the factory. I was going.
You're invited.
I think. Well, I think I was going, and then COVID happened or something.
Possibly.
I'm sure that. Yeah, but anyhow, I know that I was going.
You will be in Southend soon, I'm sure.
Well, thank you. If I or you have got anything to do with it, I'd love to see it because the first turntable I ever sold as a hi-fi salesman, as I think about a 16-year-old working part-time at a hi-fi store Thursday night, Saturday mornings, was a P3.
Really?
Or planar 3 as it was.
Pretty high-end at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was about $6.99 or $7.99 or $6. It might have been $5.99.
Possibly. What year would have this been, Andrew? Dare I ask?
It was a while ago. It was 6 or 7 years ago. No, it was. I think it was kind of like probably 83.
Yeah, that would be right. Yeah, because we did have a patch of inflation in the mid '80s, didn't we?
Well, we think there was quite a bit of inflation.
Quite a bit of inflation, yeah, that would make sense. I think by the time we started in...
Well, it was hardly any dearer, was it?
Well, 97, there had been a fair bit of inflation. I think the Rega 3s at that time were around about $1,100, $1,200 by that stage. And,
I reckon I was selling them at $9.99 at one point.
Oh, no, you would have, absolutely.
But anyhow, the point is that they make... Okay, so they make all these products, but the tone arms, the cartridges...
all in-house.
All in-house.
All in England.
Yeah, which is just amazing.
It gives them incredible control over their destiny, and I think, as I'm coming back to this point, some of our brands might appear at first glance to be unrelated. Arenda, Rega, Audio Research, but the one commonality that they share is they're all driven by engineers. And I think yesterday I might have mentioned to you that Arenda, which is our Korean streamer server business, one of the leaders in that space, absolutely gloriously built and engineered. They've got full control over their hardware, their software, and their firmware.
Yeah, okay.
So the entire product they've got control over. And the company, which consists of 30 staff, 28 are engineers, including their salespeople are engineers.
That's right.
Did I mention this to you?
No, you may have mentioned it previously, but I just tuned out. I think when I have exhibited HiFi with the assistance of a customer of yours and a customer of mine, effectively, as I sold him the business. But we used Alex's Arenda for some years, and what a delightful analog kind of sounding piece of digital equipment. I mean, is that how it strikes you, the sound? I mean, it's quite a... It's not sharp and bitey, is it?
No, it's certainly a premium piece in the sense that, they're not entry-level products per se.
Well, no, they're not.
But the wonderful thing about them is that whether you've got, a need for an analog output from a DAC-based version or a digital-only product because you have a high-end DAC elsewhere, the company can produce a product that will give you a server streamer digital front end, if you like. And it's borne out by the large number of other manufacturers that use Arenda as their digital source for their systems.
Yeah, you do actually see that quite a lot.
Exponent, I think, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. You should just shoot over to Chicago.
I think fitting 3 shows into a month and a half will be more than my body can stand.
So close to Munich.
You could go... Look, if I lived a life of leisure, such as yourself, I would go to all 3, but that is not going to happen. I will be. I need a holiday before I even go to Munich, which is what I'm going to do.
Well, certainly, and then you go across to North America and look at Audio Research and McIntosh's background, and both those companies very much led from an engineering perspective. So whether it be Rega in the United Kingdom, Arenda in Korea, and these North American companies, and all of our companies, they have this wonderful commitment to innovation and performance and value, I think.
I would guess part of the fun of your job is that you get to speak to all these interesting, intelligent people, but also get to see some of how the magic happens. I would imagine.
There's a great joy, and I think one of the things that I find fascinating is that the company's 30 years old, and it's almost more enjoyable now than ever before. The equipment is spectacular. The music that we can reproduce is just formidable.
I think it kind of is. I mean, I had the pleasure of listening briefly in a competitor's room by accident yesterday afternoon, and a well-known brand with some, a very old brand with a very old brand driving them, but new music, Australian music actually.
How cool!
The engineering, the sound was. I mean, it would sound equally as impressive on your system. It's just that you weren't playing.
No, of course.
At the time, maybe you do, and I can't remember the name of the artist, but we'll mention it somewhere in the podcast because I will speak to that gentleman later today.
I would be fascinated to hear. We love new music.
I've got a picture of it. I'll show you before we leave. But it is the sound quality. It's like Yellow as far as the incredible high quality of the engineering, but getting it somewhat away from Yellow's, enjoyable, but you can only listen to so much Yellow, so this is a different take. But the quality of the sound really has gotten better. And the reproduction the sound recording has gotten better. People who love analog tape and analog mixing consoles would disagree, but really this was very clean and warm and analog, but incredibly detailed, fast and dynamic. But the playback gear has got better. I always think probably more so loudspeakers perhaps than electronics, but the streaming has also gotten way better. The digital side of things is sounding more and more analog, I feel. So, but record players have a place. Well, you've got the P10 on display. Well, you've got the Naim.
We've got two Regas actually in our room. We've got the Naim, which is the new flagship. It just sits above the P10 and was a derivative of a concept product called the Naiad that they produced.
That's right, which is like a cost-no-object machine.
Cost-no-object machine. They produced, I think, somewhere around 30 to 50 units, I think. We had one that came into Australia.
You did get one? You didn't keep it, you sold it though, didn't you?
Well, somewhat reluctantly it did get sold. To be fair, if I got to keep all the pieces that I would like, I would need another office.
Yeah, sorry, I was having a sneaky espresso shot there, and I almost
slurped it.
Yes, I feel for your.
No, there's some wonderful
I would
pieces.
have this. I mean,
I'm actually searching for an Alchemist Kraken, if anyone can find one, because that's a piece that obviously has a special.
Someone did ask me to fix a piece of Alchemist equipment not that long ago.
We still have some.
I'm not sure if it came in, but I would remember it if it did, though.
Yeah, it was quite
very
lovely.
Striking heat sinks and stuff from memory. Yes,
that's the one. Yeah, we've still got one or two pieces. We've got an old Nemesis, and I think we might have a Forsetti somewhere. But the Kraken was almost their iconic piece that they produced. It was a 2-box, a Class AB amplifier, although it was very heavily biased towards Class A because it did generate up to 55, 60 degrees on the heat sinks.
Yes.
So a little bit hot.
Yes. Just don't lean against it.
No. So I think it is an enjoyable time to be on. I'm expanding my music collection now, more so than I've ever done.
I was going to ask you that. You've got. You do all three? You've got records, CDs and streaming?
Absolutely, and use them all in different capacities. One of the fascinating things for me right now is if you want to find new music, obviously streaming is a wonderful way to do that. Yeah. But in some ways the experience with streaming can somewhat be a little sterile perhaps, in the sense that you're momentarily engaging with the music, but it's not there. Once you've turned it off, where is it? It's nowhere. Physical media, I think, has a different sensation. Of course, I'm of that era that grew up around LPs and CDs. But
you're only in your late 30s.
Exactly.
I would have thought.
I started the company when I was in diapers, as the Americans would say. But no, it's very enjoyable, and I think I was lucky enough to acquire a number of CD collections during the COVID period, and the enjoyment that you get from listening to new pieces that you might not have come across, and some of this, of course, is not available on streaming services.
That's the thing. There's lots of CDs I have which I don't play much, but I have got them, ripped to a hard drive. Yep. And so the CDs kind of sit in the box. But the point is, there's whole bunches of things I've got that don't appear on streaming services.
Well, and in fact, one of the ones, speaking of Australian artists, I wanted to be able to play one of the Christine Sullivan discs live at Mietta's.
Okay.
Beautiful piece. I think it was released late 90s, early 2000s.
Yes.
Doug DeVries on bass guitar, I believe.
Right.
No, he might be lead guitar actually. But some of the fantastic, iconic jazz musicians, and for one night only in Melbourne, and I've got the disc.
Yeah, and it'll never be on stream.
It's not on any of the services.
No.
Certainly not the high resolution services. No. So I think Christine might have 8 or 9 titles. You might be lucky to get 3 or 4 on streaming services.
This is the thing. Quite often, I'm a Tidal fan, but they annoy me a bit from time to time, where quite often the best album that an artist has is the one Tidal doesn't seem to have, which is kind of annoying.
I think
the joy of an album back in the day, and equally as much today, because they're still expensive, right? It's an expensive way to obtain music.
It's costly sport.
But you are invested, not just so you're forced to listen to it in a way, because you're like, well, I paid $60 for this thing, right? So I'm gonna bloody well get my money's worth out of it. So you on first blush, you may not particularly enjoy the album, or you might only like one or two tracks. But I mean, you force feed it to yourself, and I think you will never do that with streaming. You'll just go, no, I like it, move to the next thing. And so you're really not expanding your horizons in a way.
Not investors. Not investing.
Your brain isn't tuning in or something. There's something going on there.
There's another element as well, which is the collections element. You know, if you want to collect, you know, your own curated copy of whatever you're listening to, then yes, you can have a playlist, of course. But then you stop paying that subscription. What happens to your playlist?
Well, it clearly disappears. Yes.
So I think if you want to have a collection that you can give to a cherished other, and pass down perhaps, then physical media obviously still has a place, and the rise of vinyl is testament to that, I think. Which is
it's funny. I mean, to some degree, vinyl is responsible for me buying equipment from you, because I had to start selling Regas again.
Oh, yes.
Because people were coming to the bloody shop and asking for them, and asking for, not necessarily specifically Regas. In some cases they would have, but they just wanted a turntable. And this is quite a while ago now.
Yeah.
So we've covered that.
Yes.
And we could talk about that for a long time. But I just wondered whether there's some new models or something. I mean, you mentioned the monoblocks, kind of irrelevant to most of the audience, but if they're the ones that I've seen in your room, they are a delight to behold.
Well, they're actually only just released, and they're almost like a rebirthing of audio research. It's gone through a number of changes.
Well, actually, I mean, that is okay. We could talk about that for a second, because obviously audio research went through a bad phase recently, but it seems to have bounced back.
Yeah, it was undercapitalised, and there was a change of ownership just over a couple of years ago now. And the new team has invested considerable amounts in
it looks that way,
not just in new product and but in the backbone of the company, the
carry
engineering,
it forward, bring it,
the production processes and software behind that. It's been quite astounding. So it's one thing to buy a company, it's another thing to keep it running with the capital required. So the Ref 330s are an outcropping of that, and they've just announced a new range of I won't say more affordable when I'm talking about audio research, but certainly lower priced products.
Yeah, okay. So what is the entry level of audio research? If you want an integrated amplifier?
Well, the i50 is the current entry point at around about $12,000.
That's not too bad.
No, it's a complete US
made. And is that transistor or tubes? Tubes.
Yeah,
for 12 grand from audio research.
Yep, that's right.
It's not crazy.
That's right. And
considering that's Australian dollars, for our international listeners. And so in the US, it's like $8,000 or something.
Oh, less.
Yeah.
So I think the American dollar is quite strong at the moment.
Well, for now, or our dollar's weak, one or the other. But I mean, there's the exchange rate's awful.
We almost double. I wouldn't be surprised if it's around about 6,000 US.
Is that right?
Thereabouts. Because
they always freight to get it here and so forth.
Well, they quote X-tax and we quote ink tax.
Oh, that is true. You want to be a little bit aware of that.
Tends to be about double in Australia to get parity. Parity, roughly speaking. But so they've got some new products coming down the line, which they've just announced: the LS2 and LS3 preamps. A new valve power amp and 2 new solid state power amps. So audio research, although it's historically most famous for its tube designs, has right through from the 70s produced solid state products, which have...
I own one. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, people get excited.
Which one have you got?
I've got it's full of Fezz. It's a preamp, and I've forgotten the model, but it's a preamp.
DS Pre?
I wonder.
Do you know how old it would be?
I think it's sort of mid-90s. And I just use it on the test bench when I need a preamp.
You'll have to send a photo across because it's immaculate.
I mean, but unfortunately, I ended up with it because it was full of corrosion from living near the coast.
Yes, that was a problem in your old...
Yes, I've slowly repaired it. To the point where at least it mostly works and certainly good enough for what I'm doing with it. But it's such a nice... I mean, I look at a piece of audio research every day sitting on my workbench. You know,
joy?
it's kind of
I've
weird,
got a 30-plus-year-old VT200 in my office, which we brought back from its deathbed. It had been sort of had to run into an accident with a cat.
Well, so it's a heavy product, so I can only imagine the way the cat would have damaged it was a bit smelly, I would imagine, and corrosive.
I suspect you're right. So we had to do a fair bit of board replacement.
Yeah, I bet you did. But it's super corrosive stuff.
Yeah,
though.
but it's a glorious piece, and I think the company's ascendant in one sense because the commitment of the current team is unequivocal and. The Ref 330s are emblematic of where the company is going. So I think
going up.
Well, in terms of new innovative new designs that are trying to move that bar forward. And it's the same for Rega, it's the same for Arenda, it's the same for McIntosh. We've got some beautiful new services.
You've actually got a hell of a suite of brands, really, haven't you? You just. It obviously didn't happen by accident. It's maybe McIntosh, but But I mean, you have to be able to pull it off, and you have. In fact, McIntosh has been a while now. Is it 10 years or something? Or?
Yeah. So it's 10 years this year for us. So that's 2014.
So
we just taken over the New Zealand market for them. So we've just launched our New Zealand operation only 5 months ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually 6 months ago. Yeah. So in just the 1st of November. So
an international player in audio distribution these days.
We are an Australian-New Zealand company now.
Yeah, okay.
So companies, because we actually have to run separately over there.
Yes.
But
they have some pretty special rules over there.
Oh, well, yeah.
How do you find New Zealand?
Oh, I actually love it.
It's an amazingly beautiful place.
And
the seafood.
Oh.
But that accent.
Well, the other thing, of course, is if you're into motorcycling, it's a wonderful.
Well, you've got, of course, the legend of Southern Hemisphere motorcycle manufacturing in the form of the now deceased, unfortunately. Oh my God, I've forgotten his name. John. What's his bloody name? Is it John? You know what I mean. The purple motorbike, right? The pink and purple bloody handcrafted motorcycle. I'm going to have to edit this particular podcast, actually, because I had a fairly big night last night and some of my memory has been vaporised.
No, that's okay.
But I guess that's what you're referring to. Stunning machine.
Great roads and
great riders in history as well. Yeah. So the roads are stunning.
So
you were alluding more to personal motorcycling than watching racing, yes?
Well, you can do both.
Did you take your bike as luggage?
I actually feel like we should have a bike over there, which would be wonderful to.
Well, you could do that. I know where you could buy one similar to yours, and you could keep it in New Zealand. But anyhow, it's not really for sale. But
indeed.
Hey, Phil. Thank you so much.
No, wonderful.
This is
Andrew. It's a great joy.
Pleasure. I actually, so we got the batteries didn't just give up, did they? No, they're still going,
still rolling.
I will install a new set after this recording. Look, thank you for your time.
No,
You've got
pleasure.
a big day, and I'll let you go. But thank you for the coffee. We could go on for hours. We didn't even touch on motorcycling, really, and some of your other brands as well. Because I think you've got about 19 or 20 brands.
It's probably our company's divided into two divisions. We have our sort of HiFi
custom install and HiFi,
and we have a custom install division. So there are some brands that are very specific to that second division. So in the HiFi space, we've probably got about 12 to 14 main brands.
Still plenty, right?
Enough, but keep in mind that some of these are in very, very different categories, like cabling,
that's right,
servers, loudspeakers. So they're in different categories. But it is a great joy to work with all of these wonderful manufacturers, and come and have a listen if you're in Sydney at the Australian HiFi show at the Sydney Central.
This bloody episode, as I keep having to disappoint my interviewees, is that it's going up like a day after the show, which is kind of annoying. But what isn't is a little video which I'll be in to shoot some footage later on, and
can't wait to see it.
And that will be going up this afternoon. So
thank you, Andrew,
thank you so much.
Spreading the word.
Yeah, Phil Sawyer, thank you so much for your time. Happy to spread the word, and I'll speak to you again.
Thanks, Andrew.
Okay,
cheers.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Coming up now, we have Adam Prangell from Marantz and Denon, and followed by Keating, Piega being his key product that I enjoy. It's a delightful sounding loudspeaker made in Switzerland. Hey, we're here with Adam Prangell from, I suppose, Denon Marantz. I mean, Sound United.
Indeed,
Is it?
yep,
Yeah.
that'd be correct.
But your area of expertise, not so much Bowes and Wilkins. We've spoken to John Martin about that, but more Marantz, Denon, Definitive Technology, and
Polk Audio as well.
Audio. Yeah, you got some great displays here. Good sound, and but the Denon gear actually surprised me before. That's a very affordable system.
In the Denon Polk room there?
Yeah.
The PMA 3000 NE?
Yeah, it's a big lump.
It is a big lump.
Yes.
It's the flagship.
Yes, yeah.
$6,000 retail?
Yeah.
So very affordable.
Yeah, absolutely, considering, what it does and how it sounds. But the thing that caught my ear yesterday, and when we briefly spoke off air, so to speak, is in the other room with the 805 signatures and that new Marantz, is it Series 10 or what are we
Correct.
calling it?
So the complete system would be the Series 10,
Yes.
which comprises of the Model 10 integrated amplifier,
Yes.
the Link 10N, which is the network player
okay.
streamer preamplifier,
Yeah.
and then the
preamp as well. Yeah. Okay, yep.
and then the SACD10, which is the Super Audio CD player.
Yeah, it's great that you're still making a CD player that not only is a CD player but is a Super Audio CD player. It does have a bit of a following in certain circles, audiophile circles.
But we're not that here.
No. There's no audiophiles here. We're definitely not an audiophile. We also spoke about that equipment has HEOS capability. Now, I'm not a digital kind of guy. I mean, I love streaming, and it's how I mostly listen to music. But I concern myself less with how it works and more with just listening to music, I guess. HEOS, I guess everyone knows more about it than I do, but there's one key thing that I didn't know about it, is that it's invented in Australia.
Indeed.
What can you tell us about that?
So it would be going back to probably 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
I think 2010 was when there was a gentleman called Peter Selinsky and his brother.
Yes.
They were Adelaide University guys, did a white paper around Wi-Fi, being that Australia invented Wi-Fi
Well, we invented
as well.
Wi-Fi, that we know, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they then started doing this wireless speaker technology and working on creating this. They took it through to CES.
Yes.
Originally a couple of floor standing speakers, won some awards at CES.
Yes.
Came back to Australia and they went hunting for an owner, and that's when D&M Holdings,
Yes.
Denon and Marantz Holdings back in the day,
Yeah.
they brought into the technology.
Okay.
Around about 2014,
Yeah.
I believe, is when we started to launch the product into the market. So it's just cracked on 10 years in the market now.
Yes.
But back then it was a brand, and we had
Yeah.
active speakers.
Yeah.
We had the HEOS 1, the HEOS 2.
Yeah. That's kind of how I remember it, and then I see it appearing as a sort of a logo on streamers, I guess, and that's where, I mean, it's kind of a streaming software, hardware.
Yeah, so we call it an ingredient.
An ingredient.
So
okay,
it's an ecosystem.
Yes.
And being that we are Massimo Consumer, Sound United, and we have a plethora of brands, we like to spread that ingredient across our brands.
Yeah.
So the ecosystem can work, whether it's a Denon active speaker or the Link 10N flagship streaming preamplifier from
Yes.
Marantz.
Yeah.
They all use the HEOS module.
Yeah.
And that module, it allows for obviously control via the HEOS app. It allows for connecting. So
Yes.
as in Spotify Connect or
Yeah,
Tidal
yes,
Connect.
Yes.
Apple AirPlay too.
Okay.
So you can do all those sort of Connect sort of services.
Yeah.
But our engineers, they call themselves engineers. I refer to them as the nerds.
The nerds. Apparently, you've got a room full of, or even a factory full of nerds in Sydney.
Correct. So we've got about somewhere between 40 and 50 nerds in our Chatswood office.
Okay.
And
Is that how
engineers.
you advertise the positions?
I'm sure they don't advertise it as nerds.
Highly experienced nerd required.
Mate, they are geniuses, to be honest.
Well, they
to be
clearly
fair.
are. Yes, yeah.
They, whether it's fixing bugs and growing the platform or adding new features, there's little teams So they'll break up into a team of 5 or 6 nerds or engineers, and they have a role to do each. So there's a little group that just works on bug fixes, because every time they change something, something trickles down, right?
Yes.
Or there's another team that works on just the streams coming in. So they just work on bringing those streams into the HEOS module.
Okay.
And then there's another team that works on taking the streams and sending it through the system, whether that is just playing on that one device or sharing it across the multiple devices.
Yeah, okay.
The beauty is, because we're not branded, because we've got all these brands, we can have an active speaker from Denon, we can have a CD player from Marantz, or the new Marantz active speakers over there with the Horizon, Grand Horizon.
Yeah, which I'm going to ask you about in a second, because they're very interesting. So it's basically the same, I guess it's the same circuit board, the software works on all of them, and of course it encompasses an app to control the device.
Correct.
As in the piece of hardware, the amplifier, streaming device, what have you.
I believe we're on to our 7th generation of that module.
Yeah, okay.
So over time, I can't remember what the first one was called. The second one was known as the Lego chipset, and then third, fourth, fifth, and we're now just released in our latest products the AIOS 7.0 chipset.
Yeah, okay.
And on that one, a lot of the codecs and stuff that's usually on separate silicon chips on boards is all being brought onto the HEOS silicon.
Oh, okay.
When it comes to...
So you've kind of simplified it. Wow, it's a bigger chip, but...
It makes it harder for these guys, our engineers / nerds. They're now having to do a lot more work, but it gives us a lot more control over how things are decoded and how things then get shared.
Yeah, right.
So it's amazing what they do there.
Well, it's all a step forward, I guess. And the hardware, though, is clearly made in one of your factories elsewhere, I presume, because that would make sense. But
Correct.
But it's interesting that you've kept an Australian idea, invention, or what have you, local, and which I guess makes sense because there was a bit of a history of it, or was it? I mean, what is is there a good? Of course, there's a good reason, but what is part of the reason why it's done locally still?
Well, I guess Anders, who's headed it up ever since I've known. For over 10 years, Anders has been the lead engineer of the team. He's been living and working here all this time.
He lives in Sydney. He doesn't want to commute to wherever.
And the way the world works today,
it doesn't matter where you are.
Not now. No. You've got Teams. You've got email. You've got these guys deal with the Japanese engineers. They also deal with the engineers over in Carlsbad. So there's teams around the world that all collaborate and come together to create this ecosystem that we're running with now.
It's completely impressive. The spherical speakers, the
Horizon and Grand
Horizon. Horizon and Grand Horizon.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Excuse my ignorance on that front. I admittedly, it's probably a little out of my area of interest personally, but I tell you what, the industrial design is terrific. It looks they're very striking. Seem to sound pretty good. What can you tell us about that that's exciting?
So design was a huge part. I mean, obviously being Marantz, it has to sound good.
Yes.
There's no doubt about that. The Marantz sound master, he works with his engineering team to make sure that everything that has the Marantz badge on it sounds like a Marantz product. Sound signature has to be Marantz. However, the actual design of it was very important because it is a higher end product. So our European team worked on the design of that one. It's actually won the IF Design Award just recently, so it is being recognised as a beautiful piece. The base that they sit on is real marble, and depending on which of the 3 colours you purchase, the marble base matches the colour of the product. They've kept things like the porthole design, so that's why it's a sphere shaped. So that ticks the box of the Marantz porthole.
Yes.
And when you
as in connecting it to the styling of the amplifiers that had been the case for last 20 years or
easily. 70 years of Marantz, and I believe the porthole's been a part of Marantz's look for pretty much most of that time.
Yeah.
Not all of it, but most of it.
Yeah.
Also, when you touch the the touch controls, and you see the lights going up and up and up as you're adjusting the volume. They are little pointers of the North Star, which again is a tip of the cap back to the Marantz North Star that is on all of our products. The cloth itself, the acoustic cloth to cover the speakers, a lot of thought went into that, and being that they're trying to be more eco-friendly, it's actually made out of 100% recycled ocean plastics.
Wow, okay.
So it's a plastic cloth, but it's now a
Are
nice
you not
cloth.
concerned that you might run out of raw materials?
I'm pretty sure there's enough plastics left in the ocean to keep us going for a while. But that's one seamless piece as well. So they had to create a sort of like a tube at either end of the cloth to put the ring on to help make it nice and taut.
Yes, okay.
To help with that acoustic transparency. So it's a beautiful piece. And you'll find there's a little speckle going through that, which is one strand that's been sewn in, so that when it catches the light, it gives it a little glitter effect.
Yeah, I'm going to go and have a closer look then, because there's obviously, like all of these things, there's a hell of a lot more under the surface, I guess, that one doesn't realise with a quick glance.
Yep.
And then the Series 10, we touched on it is your top of the range product. Class D amplification.
Yeah, so...
Do you got any thoughts on why, with a super history, well, if you go back, tubes obviously, and then, so Class A in effect, then some very, warm sounding Class AB amplifiers over the years, and I mean, look, the Class D is matured, of course. It sounds amazing now, and has done for a few years, but it's such a hefty, serious product, it seems counterintuitive that you would use a Class D module of some description, although I believe it's
not just an off-the-shelf module.
No, and the power supply is, I mean, it's a linear, it's got a giant transformer in it.
Big toroidal power supply inside, absolutely. But the Class D module itself is actually completely built in our Shirakawa factory. The whole unit is.
Yes, yeah.
They've gone to Purify and got, let's call it a blueprint from Purify, one of the leading Class D manufacturers in the world. So we've taken that, and then our engineers, including our Marantz Sound Master, have, I guess you could say, like a chef.
Sound Master.
Oh, he is a Sound Master.
Does he wear special clothing?
He has a special jacket that says Sound Master. But imagine it like a chef. When a chef goes and grabs Gordon Ramsay's cookbook, he won't follow the recipe to the nth degree. He will then add his own salt, his own pepper, his own little bit of chili, his own little bit of spice, whatever.
It's a bit of a template for...
Correct. He makes it his own.
Yeah.
It's no different to what they've done with the Purifier amp module.
Yes.
So they've taken the blueprints, they've gone and got all the parts, or created the parts if they weren't happy with the parts they could get locally, and then they've put it together, they've gone back to Purify, they've ticked it off, gone, yep, perfect, no problem, we're happy with that.
So if it sort of has to be given the tick by Purify for what, stability or something, or component quality, or you don't really...
That's probably
we don't know.
a bit over my price.
I mean, it's a bit bloody complicated.
It is, well above my pay grade.
Yeah.
But it's been approved by them, they've then utilised that and created, I think, what's pretty much the showstopper here this weekend.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what it is. In the sound, I mean, I was impressed yesterday afternoon when I heard, and that particular track that you were playing that I've forgotten the name of, but Smilk.
Yes, that's right, Last Rainforest.
Australian artist, look it up, people. It is a stunning piece of music that is stunningly engineered, and then when played on the 805 signatures, and I don't want to go on and on about it, but they are not a particularly large loudspeaker. They're in a normal sized domestic space in this hotel room, and driven by this beautiful stack of gear. It's got a degree of precision, clarity, openness, cleanness, dynamics, full bandwidth. I mean, it just sounds, it sounds amazing, right?
It does. Makes the hairs on your arms stand on the end.
It's look, and people who know me know that I don't go around saying you must buy a pair of 800 series speakers, they're the only one to buy. I mean, there's lots of great speakers. But it's a very, I'll tell you what it is for those who are listening who aren't lovers of the 800 series necessarily, because maybe they're they expose a little bit too much detail of the recording or something like that. This combination of the 800 805s with the Marantz 10 is a sweet. It's one of those classic synergistic sort of combinations where they just work. They seem to work together brilliantly. I mean, it kind of makes sense that you would do that, right? But
yes, but there's a lot of history behind that too.
Yeah. Okay.
So even though Marantz or D&M Holdings and it has been working in our Shirakawa workshop for many, many, many years, creating our Marantz product there.
Yes.
D&M in Japan have also been the Bowers & Wilkins distributor for a very, very, very long time.
Okay.
So even before Sound United picked up Bowers & Wilkins to bring it in-house, they have always sounded the new Marantz gear on Bowers & Wilkins speakers.
Yes.
For a very long time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so the synergies are just, they're matched perfectly.
Yeah.
Called a perfect pairing, if
it's one of the most impressive sounds I've ever heard on what I would rate as a more or less affordable system. I mean, it's not an inexpensive system, but compared with some of the things that you see at shows that are impressive are quite often so expensive that it's kind of irrelevant, whereas this is, somewhat attainable and it's quite stunning. Congratulations on having magnificent sound at a hi-fi show. Some people say it can't be done. Clearly it can. So, very impressed. Hey, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for your inside information. It's much appreciated, Adam, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks, Andrew. Been a pleasure, mate.
A pleasure. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
An Australian loudspeaker legend has been born with the stunning new VAF Research i93 Mark V, winner of StereoNet's Floor Standing Loudspeaker Product of the Year and Sound and Image Magazine's Floor Standing Speaker of the Year, $20,000 to $50,000. VAF's i93 has redefined what I thought was possible from a loudspeaker in a domestic setting, says StereoNet. VAF Research, building award-winning loudspeakers in Australia since 1978. So yet another live cross from, that's not that live because we're recording it, from the Sydney Hi-Fi Show 2025, this time with Cameron Keating, who reliably informs me he is related to the infamous... Distant.
Yes.
How does that happen? I mean, we know how it happens.
Well, it's all from Ireland, of course. Tall fellas from Ireland that decided to come to Australia.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm not so tall.
But, interesting guy. So, and so are you, because you've got an incredible range of equipment that you import, but you've just you've told me that you used to be involved with Tascam.
My origins go back, let's just say, before I was in the industry, I was kind of related to the industry.
Okay.
Uncles were importers, brother was a tech, so I was kind of the guy who used to listen to a lot of the audio systems at home and cousin's house, uncle's house, whatever the case may be. Yeah. And I was generally the sounding board.
Okay.
As to what sounded good.
Yeah, right.
So at a young age, they were all coming to me for recommendations and, what do you think? Even my dad. And I said, okay, this is a rare for my dad.
Yes.
And I did differ with my brother, who was a guitarist, so
Okay.
But that's okay.
And you're a failed guitarist?
No, unfortunately, I wanted to be a saxophone player.
Yeah.
And I was put into clarinet.
Okay.
And then I thought...
It's kind of uncool.
Most of the, clarinet players were uncool. And I did like the big, beefy dude that was playing for Tina Turner on the saxophone. I thought he was doing a great job. And and then the guys from UB40. So I thought, So I couldn't switch. He wouldn't let me switch. So I said, I'm out of it.
Okay. So you turned to the dark side, or the alternate side, which is, of course, flogging hi-fi equipment. Have you been doing that a while?
Yeah, so I moved in. I was doing a Bachelor of Business Accounting, and I went to work for TIAC.
Yeah.
And TIAC in the days were about 19 people.
Yes.
We were in Whiteman Street, South Melbourne, and we were...
I remember that address well for some reason.
Yeah,
the bottom of every ad or something.
Yeah, right near the casino now, and it's a great spot. So we were next to Rose Music, which was Yamaha at the time. We were the people that were closest to the city as far as distributors of hi-fi gear, and we had Tascam, we had Blaupunkt TVs, TIAC of course, we had all the cassettes and so forth, and then we had Denon, Nippon Music.
Oh,
So we had the record label.
They had the record label.
Yeah, so we had a
okay.
really cool, eclectic.
They're quite a little band of brands then, really.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and because of the business background that I'd studied, so they put me into statistics and getting a lot of things done.
Early
in the
80s
days.
or something? Or?
Yeah, mid 80s. Yeah.
Mid 80s.
Mid 80s. Yeah.
Okay.
Late 80s. Yeah. So so I was put into that area and then started to work my way through the industry a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at some point, you struck out on your own. And I should mention that Max Media is your business.
20 years this year.
I was going to say, I was just about to say, it feels like 20 years.
Yeah,
It is 20 years.
towards the end of this year, it's 20 years, so we'll be celebrating that.
It's
Yeah.
quite an achievement. Congratulations. I mean, it's a tough industry to be in.
Yeah.
But you have got to, I mean, I'm not quite sure what you were distributing back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you'll tell us where you started, but the current lineup is, well, I mean, the one that I know about, as I mentioned to you yesterday, Piega,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe is approximately how it's pronounced, is such a lovely loudspeaker. The Swiss make some interesting loudspeakers. They all sound a little bit different. They're all beautifully made, of course, understandably. They have the ability to really finely machine pieces of metal, which is in fact, Piega has got a lot of aluminium in it, I believe.
Yeah, these days it's all aluminium bodies.
Okay.
So it's extruded aluminium, and they find it is the
Magic
most
go on a
rigid.
budget.
Well, possibly.
Well, the thing is-
well, see, Piega go up to $600,000.
Yeah, yeah, they do, but they also start at, what, 5?
Well, they do have some products, and they do produce in China and they produce in Switzerland.
Okay.
So what they call their A series out of China is a little bit more on the affordable, and you can get the bookshelf speakers, in the world of about $3,000.
Well,
and
there
then
you go.
the Swiss-made product as a bookshelf speaker would really start in that sort of $5,000 sort of category
I mean, that's, $5,000 odd dollars
for Swiss-made.
made in Switzerland. I mean, that's kind of great value, isn't it?
Yeah, it is great, and we say it's a discerning customer that sort of goes to the Piega. I mean, not everybody wants a Swiss watch or can afford a Swiss watch, so it's basically they've narrowed down the field of what they want in, I guess, aesthetics, size, and sound, and then it comes down to that.
Yeah, well, it's certainly the sound is very cohesive, very balanced, very neutral, very easy to listen to. I've been impressed in past occasions where I've had to listen to them. But you've got, we're sitting in your room, and there's a number of interesting products in front of us. That tube amplifier is very striking.
That was launched 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
So that is the new Fezz Olympia. I'll explain a little bit more about Fezz in a moment, but
Sure.
that is 100 watts into 4 ohm, so 100 watt per channel.
Well, that's a
4 ohm, dual mono
powerful
configuration.
Oh, it has got it's got 4 tubes a channel in the output, obviously.
KD88s, and so they come standard with the KD88s from JJ, but then you can up spec it as well for a couple hundred or a couple of grand. It goes up to the next level of tube.
Yeah.
And then with tubes, some people have a preference on what style they like, or origin, or whatever the case may be. So
Okay.
Auto biasing, so all the complexity of managing the tubes is taken away.
So no manual adjustment required?
No manual adjustment needed. No, that's pretty switched on.
It's a quality looking item. I have to admit, unlike Piega, I know nothing of Fezz. I don't know where it's from.
Oh, I'll explain it then. All right. So Fezz is from Poland, and like a lot of the Polish companies that are coming out now and being known, and we deal with 4 of those.
Okay.
So
they're a coming force, aren't they? I mean, they've always been doing it.
They've been
I guess.
there, and the industry, the hi-fi industry in Poland is quite robust, and these guys have been making for a lot of the industry. And the parent company of Fezz is Tyroidi. So they've been running in excess of 30 years, and they're in excess of 50 people in the manufacturing side of things.
So it's quite a
it's a decent company, as with the other guys that we deal with. So part of that is there's substance behind what they're doing, and they can spec it to the way they want. And one thing we do say about Fezz is that so they're building these awesome transformers and power supplies. And they're delivering what a lot of people say, tube amps are a bit noisy, bit this and bit that. We go, okay, so we just turn the volume to 0 and we go, no noise. tube amp and it's a tube DAC,
dead
you'd
quiet.
expect some noise, but there's no noise. It's dead
Neither
quiet.
mechanical from the mains transformer nor
No,
nor,
they're
noise from
isolated.
circuitry.
Yeah, and they've reserved a lot of the best gear internally for themselves.
So they make kind of, well, they don't, well, I don't know, maybe they do. Do they make tubes in Poland?
They don't
Well,
make
certainly
tubes
nearby, I guess.
No, they're very close to them. So tubes, the origins of tubes are from a few countries. One of them is in hot water at the moment. But anyway,
They started it.
Yeah, they did.
As Basil Fawlty once said. The transformers, though, are clearly made in Poland.
or made in Poland. Well, that is 80% made in Poland. So the only thing that's not made in Poland is the tubes.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so the casework is made in Poland by them. Okay, so I'll explain a
They've
little
got
bit about
some
this
serious
design.
Tool. I mean, that's a beautifully machined piece of aluminium. I assume that is.
No, it's actually sheet metal, but what it looks like aluminium.
I guess. Hang on.
Yeah.
So the front panel, which from this distance, 2 metres away, looks like it's a nice a section of an extrusion, but it's folded.
Folded.
Okay. All right.
So these guys own not only the finishing side of it, which is the painting, but they own the sheet metal place.
Yes.
So all the gear and componentry that's going into it, they produce all that.
Yeah.
And when it came to the design, though, they did say, okay, well, they had a series before that was pretty local in what they did, and a little bit of it went to America and the UK and so forth. But they said, okay, we want to go global. We're a big company. Let's go global. We're producing a good product. So they employed a design team. It was a female-male combination, and they designed something that they thought would aesthetically appeal to a mass. Yeah,
Well, I think they
as
kind of
opposed
got
to just
that
that hi-fi, do-it-yourself kind of looking amplifier.
Yes, the slightly steampunky,
Yeah.
kooky DIY look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they've achieved that in a nutshell. But what they also achieved in doing that, so they've won over an audience on aesthetics, but in the manufacturing process, they've streamlined things by actually getting it right and getting everything looking very similar. So the whole process is from order to production is a lot quicker than it used to be.
Is the component underneath related?
It is, yes. Well, the DAC itself is okay. So Fezz make for a lot of the big heavyweights in the industry, as far as the high-end componentries, the transformers and so forth. The DAC, Lucas from Lampesator, these guys make his power supplies and transformers.
Is that right?
So they said, well, hang on, why don't you make us something? And Lucas pulled something out of his drawer, and he's a small company. He said, well, I've got this board that I never put into production, but it's really nice.
Yeah.
So the boys got it, and they played with it, and 3 months later they go, yeah, this sounds good. So they produced their first DAC. So that's the Equinox DAC, which is a single-ended.
Yeah.
And the one we've got today is the balance unit. So it's a proper balance. So when we were talking last year, I said, my rig at home and a lot of the big rigs we do are balanced.
Yes.
Can you produce that for us? And he said, we're working on it now.
Okay.
Okay. I said, okay, so when will I have that? And he said, I think you'll have it in 6 to 8 months. We're there. I said, okay, cool. So we now then explain to people that if you want a balanced unit, you can go that way. But if you've got a small, let's say 8 watt aside single-ended set amp,
Yes.
and you wanted to get a little bit more sparkle, you'd go for the single-ended DAC, or because of the inputs anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just got that little bit more gain on it.
Okay.
And it's just magic. So people are just blown away. So we do blind tests with much more expensive DACs.
Yeah.
And people are always coming back to the Fezz DAC. It is brilliant.
And you're saying its heritage lies with Lampesator, is it? Yeah. Okay.
No, and Pacific DAC is regarded as one of the best DACs in the world, and I think they're in the world of 65 grand now.
Yeah.
So the Fezz, they're a volume company, and this is part of the little issue that they had. They said, okay, well, I think Lampesator was producing a handful of DACs a month.
Yes.
And Fezz's requirements were like 200, 300, 400 possibly, and that's just scratching it.
Yes.
So there was a little stumbling block there, but they seem to have that in order now.
Okay, so pricing wise, we've discussed Piega's, goes up to $600,000, which is but starts at 3 to 5. Fezz, quite well priced, I believe, as well. That tube amplifier, the 100 watt, a channel into. Did you say into 4 or
into 4, 100 into 4? Yeah, so 100 by 2 into 4, and So that is 12 grand as it is.
Yeah, okay.
So that includes the cage, which their other products don't generally include a cage or a moat. Or the subline out. So these are standard features that come with the Olympia.
Okay.
So this is, you don't have to tick as many boxes. The only thing you need to tick as far as a box is the colour.
Yeah.
And then down the back, you'll see a little card slot. You can screw that out, and in time, it'll be about October, there'll be an option of the Bluetooth streamer.
Okay.
Or you can go for a phono stage or a DAC.
All right, and they all plug into the same little socket.
Plug into that same socket.
Yeah, okay.
But it's only one that you can slot.
Yeah, you have to choose one.
Yeah, and that'll be about $600. And they currently produce a solid state amplifier. And I said, okay, is the phono stage going to be as like that, and is the DAC going to be like that? He goes, no. In both cases, the DAC will be better, and the phono stage will be better. Yeah. So we're used to that now already. We do a brand called Cos, and they have the slot-in modules, and it works really well. So we're expecting some good things out of this guy.
Yeah, no, it makes it upgradable. And in theory, I guess you can, if you've lost interest in records at some point, you can plug a DAC module in.
Plug the DAC module in.
Yeah.
Or if you just want to simplify your life and just have one product on the shelf.
Well, yeah, you stick the Bluetooth in, I guess. It seems like a bit of a compromise. But
I had a few conversations yesterday about Bluetooth, but anyway, yeah. We don't recommend it as much.
Well, no, it's not serious fidelity, I guess.
For the car, it's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, the loudspeakers, which does that say Pylon?
You're envious of those, aren't you? From your background.
Well, they look like a few different UK speakers, really, and but I don't know anything about Pylon.
Pylon, okay, similar to Fezz. They're a big company, so you're dealing with 55 plus people.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard of the brand over the years as some kind of as a perhaps are they a manufacturer of other people's products?
They are indeed. Yeah. So they don't like to tell too many people about that.
Yeah.
But they do produce for a number of high quality brands.
Yeah.
Known as one of the best box builders in Europe.
Yes.
And they have a number of ranges and products within those ranges. Mm-hmm. Well, the Amber is one product, but it's multiple finishes. The Zircon is one product, but multiple finishes. And in this series here, we call it the Diamond Mark II series. So this taps out, without going into the extra finishes you can employ, this taps out at $8,000 for this particular pair.
That sounds like a lot of loudspeaker. What we're talking about is it's got twin 6.5 bass units, a 5 1/4 mid by the looks of it, and a very nice little soft dome tweeter that kind of looks like a very popular ScanSpeak model.
Sears.
It's a Sears though, yeah.
So these guys have, within their range of Jasper series, they run with ScanSpeak. With the Diamond series, they run with Sears.
Oh, so they're all Sears drivers. Well,
But they're modified.
Right.
So Pylon is that big a company,
yes,
they can force the change.
Yes, yeah.
And so they said, okay, well, the previous series we bought off the shelf, but now we want to modify for the next series. Okay. And a lot of the push came from the customer base. So, like for example, India said we want a bit more robustness out of the sound. Yeah. So they said, okay, we can make it more powerful. Yeah. We can do this. And so the feedback came around, and they said, yeah, okay. So it took a while. A slightly bigger box, much bigger presence in the sound. We're delighted with it. It's just a matter of, the Polish government has given both Fezz and Pylon a bit of money to do some exhibitions here and there, and just to spread their wings and get the brand going. Yeah. So that's why you'll see more of the Pylon and the Fezz now. They're venturing into this territory of the world.
Yeah. And Pylon, an Eastern European country?
Eastern European, family business again. So they've been running for quite some time.
For some reason I thought Estonia, but...
No, Poland.
Poland as well.
Yeah.
You've really got a love of Poland, haven't you?
I do at the moment.
To the Polish show too much.
I actually haven't been, and they keep promising me.
But everyone says it's amazing.
They do say it's amazing, but it's cold at the time. I'm like, I really want to go, So they keep showing me pictures of snow, and I'm going
kind of the nice thing about Munich.
Have a look at my pool. It's beautiful at the moment. Yeah.
Hey, fantastic, Cameron. It's great to see you here with an interesting range of products and
the Inuus. We didn't talk about the Inuus.
Well, would you like to?
We can talk about Inuus. Yes.
Yep.
Well, Inuus has been the streamer server product that we've been handling for many, many years. So we've into, I guess, in this case, not so much the 4th generation, but when I first started talking to the guys, I said, "Listen, Cam. It's the next series we want you to take on.
Okay.
So don't jump on board just yet, which is the Mark 1 series. Come on board with the Mark 2 and the honest relationship we had in that discussion. So it came about and there's a lot of trust there. So they said, okay, so Mark 2 we ran, we're running Mark 3 at the moment. So Mark 3 being server streamer combinations. Then we've got the Pulse series, which is a streamer only. What they've done is they've integrated their own player, so a lot of people use Rune, whereas the Inuus you don't need to. You can now use their own, which I think is better.
Okay.
Because A, it's cheap, it doesn't cost you anything.
Doesn't cost anything.
Yeah. Sound-wise, it's better because even though Rune might be a little bit better featured, I think the Inuus sounds better, and most people that have gone back to not paying the annual have really said, wow, we really enjoy the sound. So that's a great thing.
Sure. That's what it's kind of all about.
That's what it's all about in my world, yeah. And now some of the added features of this player that they've got is you can actually bolt on a USB stick at the back on top of their streamer only units, and then you can just pull the music off the USB drive.
Yeah, okay.
So they didn't have that before, but now they've got it. Not a lot of people know about it. I said, well, it's not just a streamer anymore. So that's the Pulse series. It's pretty cool. Even the Zen series, you can do that as well. Bolt on an extra drive.
My memory of the pricing is that it's super affordable, relatively speaking.
Yeah, relatively. Yeah, well, we can't compete with the Chinese being made in Portugal, and the fact that they've got their own app, and then they've got this service that just never ends.
Okay.
You know, so it's well beyond the warranty period of 2 years. It just doesn't stop.
So if you buy a piece of Inuus and you've got an issue, they're out to sort it out.
They're there, yeah.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah, really cool.
There's a bit of that lacking in some products, of course.
I hear not some bricking going on.
Not that anyone knows until it happens, I guess. You know?
Correct.
So Portuguese,
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So they cut their teeth originally in the UK, but Amelia and Nono, when Brexit was coming about, they decided, well, let's get out of here.
Yeah.
So they being Portuguese of origin, they decided that they'd go home, start fresh. It's a little bit more affordable as well.
Yeah.
And
weather's a bit nicer.
Weather is much nicer, yeah. So they're going great guns at the moment, and the what we're featuring today is a Zen Next Gen, which got launched last year, and that's a streamer server on board. And unlike the previous series where you could see the CD drive, this one is just a bolt-on via a USB drive. Okay. So you're like a verbatim or a TDK drive.
Yes, one of those.
Just whack it on the back, and all the smarts are still on the inside that'll do all the ripping for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, there's still people wanting to rip their own. I mean, I guess if you've got a solid CD collection and some of the stuff that you got is not available on a streaming service, I guess that's what you're going to do is rip it.
Well, we stream, like we look at home, we've got Apple Music because we use that in the car. It's great in the car. We've got Netflix, we've got Disney, sometimes we run KO, but we've got all these streaming things going on. And then there's a lot of people like of our vintage. We've got a huge CD collection.
How old you think I am? But
well, I'm just going by the salt and pepper. That's okay.
Salt and pepper. It's only salt, I think you'll find that.
A little bit of pepper.
Not much.
So it's we do like to archive our music, and we've been collectors over the years. People are still buying vinyl, even though it's $80 a record. But
well. They're buying them in ever-increasing numbers.
They are.
I've never seen so many records in my life. There's stacks of records in people's rooms.
I've taped
not
it
in
off.
your room.
I've taped it off a little bit. As soon as they hit $80 a record, I go, now we're kind of losing it a little bit, aren't we?
There's price tickets on a lot of people's records, and a lot of them are way more than $80.
Oh, way more. But I think anyway. So we'll go back into the CD side of it.
Yeah, back to
so
CD.
The archive, like on this floor, you'll find that. Streaming is a little bit tricky, and I've got a 5G external network.
Oh, there's a lot of people having trouble streaming.
Yes. I don't have that, and I sort of built in for the factors that we might have that issue, and so I'll go from the streamer to the internal. Most of what I'm playing at the moment is the internal. I don't have a glitch.
No.
and it sounds fantastic.
No, indeed.
So I've got real high res files in there, and it's working a beat. And then I'll go to somebody's occasional Boss Gags request, and I'll play it, and it's nice. And
it's actually a good album.
It is a
it's
good.
It's a shame there's a couple of tracks that are played to death at hi-fi shows, but it's
thanks to you. Yeah. So anyway,
yep, that's the one.
But we do enjoy it, and so as far as the archiving is concerned, there are a lot of guys that like to work off the grid, so to speak, and don't want all these subscriptions.
Yeah,
which
well,
add up.
of course, yeah.
So
I guess that is a reason. Yeah.
And the fact
not?
is, you can buy it with one. And expand this one out to 16 terabytes of storage.
Should be enough.
That's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. All right. Hey, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
The show's clearly been going quite well. It's pretty busy.
I've enjoyed this show more so than last year.
Yes.
And the year before.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think the attendance has been good. I think there's been a lot more new faces.
There's a distinct lack of the regulars, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you see a few familiar faces, but there's a lot of new faces.
The weather may have helped a bit. Last year was atrocious.
Last year the weather was a problem, yes. Yeah.
But I'm definitely, this room we've had quite a pared back system. As in last year we had a system in excess of 280 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Just one of them was that. Mm. And then this year, we're like the Piegas, they're 16 grand.
Yeah, I did catch my eye that you've got a more of a value orientated, rather than a super high end system.
Less is more, and it's really, last year we had so many people come in and go, wow, and then they walked out. They just said too expensive. Don't want to even listen to them.
Yeah, see, that's it. I mean, in some ways you want to show off the best that you've got, but
keep it real.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, so in this case, we're trying to keep it real, and even though the Pylons are half the price of the Piegas, we say they're a different market. But they're both punching way above their weight.
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely. It's solid value. Excellent. Hey, thanks again. Good luck for the rest of the day, and we will speak again soon.
Let's have our coffee.
Yeah, let's have coffee. Thanks, Cameron.